Welcome to part 1 of the new series, I Signed a Contract with the Evil God. Welcome to a world where darkness reigns and the strong write the rules. If you encounter any issues or have feedback, please let me know in the comments rather than just disliking the video. Your input helps me improve, and I'm here to make sure you have the best experience possible. Enjoy the content. Chapter 26, Part 1. The next day, Lan Yuan and Taro came to school as if nothing had happened. Perhaps for the fairy people, separation between life and death is a normal thing. Everyone has no other choice but to continue to carry the will of the deceased and move forward. However, Lan Yuan became popular. It's literally fire. In the previous campus incident at Lisa Girls' School, the mobile phone Lu Li hid in the cabinet was originally intended to secretly record Chu Ying's crimes or the process of revealing her flaws. But I didn't expect that she was really Lu Li, who narrowly escaped death, flipped through her cell phone and saw the video. Unable to contain my excitement, I posted the video online. Lying in the hospital bed, Lu Li looked shocked as she looked at her millions of likes and the vibrato that kept vibrating the news in the background. Obviously, he didn't expect that his video would attract so much attention. But I didn't expect that everyone's focus was not on Chu Ying at all, but on Lan Yuan, who broke the glass and broke into the classroom in the second half. She looked through her comments section and twitched her mouth. Why didn't any of these people pay attention to the important point? She almost died because of this. Holy crap, are you cosplaying the evil king's true eye? Ah, the girl who can play with the butterfly knife is so handsome. What is that thing at the back? Is it CG? I won't say much else. By the way, I have a friend who wants her contact information. At this moment, Lan Yuan did not realize that he had become an internet celebrity. Lan Mu, who was bored, was lying on the bed in the dormitory, trilling and laughing silly at the same time. After scrolling to the next video, his eyes suddenly widened and he paused the picture to zoom in and out carefully. Isn't this his sister? He quickly dialed Qiao's phone. Uncle Qiao. What's going on? Why is there a video of the last mission to clear air on the internet? Qiao's voice was quite tired. I have already contacted the Yuandong department. They will contact Lu Li herself later to delete the video. After subsequent use of public relations means, it will not affect Lan Yuan's normal life. Sorry, I was negligent this time. Listening to Qiao's apology, Lan Mu looked helpless. It's okay, as long as we can solve it. Wucheng Experimental High School Cafeteria. Fang Yi, have you seen that video online? Taro came over in a sultry tone. What? Fang Yi paused while picking up vegetables with his chopsticks. Oh, I knew you didn't get it. After watching the entire video, Namian remained calm and continued to pick up a piece of sweet and sour pork tenderloin with chopsticks. The photo was very good. What's wrong? You are such a stupid idiot. Taro looked at Fang Ye's dull reaction, curled his lips and sat back across from him. What are you talking about? Does it have anything to do with me? Lan Yuan raised his eyes. Taro put the phone back into his pocket and said, What are you doing? We are talking about other things that have nothing to do with you. Lan Yuan rolled his eyes when he heard this. Fang Yi fiddled with the rice grains in the bowl. Recently, Qiao was very busy. In addition to investigating the Pandora attack, there is also the search for the fleeing Chu Ying and the Yi who killed Team Shen. Of course, he would also pretend to search with Lan Yuan, Taro and the others after school. Xiaoye. Cheng Shui smiled softly, gathered up her skirt and sat next to Fang Yi. What are you talking about? Aren't those the transfer students from our class and Cheng Shui? A boy wearing a plaid shirt was holding a food plate and glanced at the three people sitting in the corner with a sly look. As soon as Fang Yi came back, he stole Zhang Qiu's crush. Another fat boy curled his lips. Anyway, I can't stand Fang Yi, pretending like that all the time. Me too. The person speaking was not one of the two, but Zhang Qiu behind him. F***K, you scared me to death. The two boys' bodies were shaken, and the soup on their plates almost fell to the ground. The two looked at Zhang Qiu behind them and looked at each other. Fortunately, I didn't say anything bad about this kid just now. Zhang Qiu put his hand on someone's shoulder, and his eyes under his glasses wandered between the three people in the distance. Since we all have the same idea, let's do something together. What's the matter? The boy in the plaid shirt hesitated. Yuan Yi, I know you like Lan Yuan, Fat Hu, you like Cheng Shui, right? Zhang Qiu pushed up the glasses on the bridge of his nose expressionlessly. Ah? The two of them were shocked, wondering where Zhang Qiu knew. I never said you had a crush on Lan Yuan. Looking at Yuan Yi's unpredictable expression, Fat Hu waved his hand hurriedly. I never said you liked Qing Shui. Yuan Yi was confused as to who had spilled the beans. Zhang Qiuza twitched his lips. These two idiots had everything on their faces. He could guess it with his feet. I have a way to help you create a perfect environment for expressing your love. Zhang Qiuza smiled slightly. I still have a good relationship with Qing Shui. As for Lan Yuan, I will take care of it. Really? Well, you just listen to my arrangements. Zhang Qiuza looked at the two people's excited expressions and felt contempt in his heart. Even if he creates opportunities for you too, so what? Do you really think Lan Yuan and Qing Shui can like you too? What should we do? Fat Tiger looked anxious. Zhang Qiuza whispered into the ears of the two of them, and the three of them looked at each other with lewd smiles. Xiaoye? Qing Shui came closer in confusion, and the girl's soft breathing almost hit Fang Ye's face. Nothing to talk about. Fang Yi smiled. Okay, but there's one thing I'm curious about. Qing Shui blinked and leaned back in his seat. What's up? Lan Yuan wiped his mouth and walked towards the recycling area with the dinner plate expressionlessly. I saw Lan Yuan's video, and you seem to be in it. Are you doing something together? Taro, who was cooking rice, suddenly stopped moving. Why didn't she see it? Qing Shui shouldn't be right? That's it. There are so many students in the cafeteria. Do you want to test it here? It's better to just go through it first. Taro thought about it and was horrified. This was definitely a scam. She watched the video several times. Fang Yi is not in the camera at all. Before Taro could speak, Fang Yi touched Qing Shui's head in a rare move, and quietly made a gesture to Taro on the other side with his other hand. You're wrong. When Taro saw Fang Ye's gesture, he felt calm, as long as it wasn't an evil. Oh. Qing Shui's cheeks suddenly turned red, and she nodded, feeling very excited in her heart. Today. Ono touched his head. Zhang Qiuza looked livid when he saw the two people's intimate actions in the distance. Thinking of his plan, his expression softened a lot. Fang Yi, just wait for me.
Chapter 27, Part 1. Fang Yi wasn't sure whether Qing Shui was currently a sequencer or an heir, and he didn't want to know, because the other result is unbearable for him. But why did Qing Shui suddenly ask such a question? Did she discover something? Several people with different thoughts and expressions silently returned to the classroom. You should be able to come, right? Zhang Qiuza looked at Fang Yelan and the others with a sincere expression. Not interested. Lan Yuan held her face, her eyes wandering. She always felt that her classmates were looking at her strangely recently. No, even when walking on the street, people would come to her and ask for photos and contact information. What's going on? Aren't you going? Taro pouted. There has been no mission to clear out the air recently. After Qiao cleaned up the mess caused by the last Pandora attack in the hotel, he went to establish a new base for the earring team, which was considered a rare vacation. Zhang Qiuza said eagerly, "It won't be boring. I booked a hotel for 2 days and 1 night, and arranged for everyone to sing and have dinner together. After the meal, everyone can also play games in the hotel." What hotel? Taro asked suspiciously. Crown Plaza Hotel, that is our 5-star hotel in Wuching. Zhang Qiuza looked proud, but his heart ached. He spent all his New Year's money, and this time he counted it down. Ah! Lan Yuan was stunned, and looked at Taro, who was also speechless. It seems that Xiao Xinjian spent a lot of money on the base area of the Mangzhong team, and even the entire hotel can be outsourced. Go ahead. Fang Yi smiled. Oh, whatever. Lan Yuan didn't have any idea. Going to Crown was no different to her than going home. Really? Zhang Qiuza looked happy and quickly suppressed his emotions. This plan is foolproof. Soon, Zhang Qiuza used his birthday as an excuse to host a banquet with classmates with whom he had a good relationship. Among them were Fang Yi, Lan Yuan, Taro, and Qing Shui. They all agreed to go. Zhang Qiuza stood on the lawn behind the teaching building, looking at Yuan Yi and Fat who looked excited, with a calm expression. As expected of you. If I could call Lan Yuan, I thought she would definitely not go. Yuan Yi patted Zhang Qiuza on the shoulder. Qiuza, you are really my brother. I will definitely confess to Lan Yuan when I succeed. Treat you to a meal. Yeah. Zhang Qiuza rolled his eyes inwardly. According to the plan, I will arrange you and Fat Hu to be Lan Yuan and Qing Shui's partners in the game, and then you will have the opportunity to be alone with them. As for Fat Tiger, I have arranged a confession ceremony for you. At that time, I will let the classmates make noises. Whether it succeeds or not depends on you. Zhang Qiuza spoke earnestly and patted Fat Hu, whose face was flushed with excitement, and smiled narrowly. Qing Shui only agreed to see the ghost. Only by allowing him to be rejected in public would he give up on Qing Shui, and naturally he would lose a competitor. What a great plan that kills 2 birds with 1 stone. Then what are we going to do? Yuan Yi and Fat Hu asked in unison. I have made arrangements, Zhang Qiuza said proudly. However, what Zhang Qiuza didn't expect at this time was, he will never, ever forget this birthday. Saturday afternoon. After Fang Yi said hello to Fang's mother, he casually grabbed a set of sweatshirts and overalls and headed to the Crown Plaza Hotel. Logically speaking, Zhang Qiuza's family has the same family environment as Cheng Xue's, and they are both middle-class families. Although it is not as good as Lan Yuan Lan Mu, who is the rich second generation, he is usually quite generous. Just because he was the class monitor before and invited the whole class to drink Moonbuck, he won many hearts. High school is the stage when vanity is at its peak. Since most of his classmates come from ordinary families, his excellent academic performance coupled with his good family background will naturally make him more popular. As everyone arrived at the hotel one after another, everyone was amazed by the luxurious decoration and interior. I have never been to a 5-star hotel. Today's birthday boy is so handsome. I'm going to take a lot of photos these 2 days. The modern and high-end hotel lobby is filled with various decorative balloons, as well as various banners and slogans saying happy birthday. Several boys, led by Yuan Yi and Pang Hu, gathered around Zhang Qiuza and were so animated with the other 3 girls that they didn't know what they were talking about. No one seemed to notice Fang Yi, who had just arrived. From the corner of Zhang Qiuza's eyes, he glanced at Fang Yi, who was silently leaning against the pillar in the hall, feeling proud in his heart. Cheng Xue walked in from the hotel door with brisk steps. Today, she was wearing a black sweater with a navy collar, a white pleated skirt, and a pair of small leather shoes under mid-length white stockings. She looked gentle and sweet, almost making all the boys present look at her. Cheng Xue, good afternoon. Fat Tiger stammered. Cheng Xue nodded, then turned to look at Zhang Qiuza. Happy birthday. The 2 people looked at each other, and Zhang Qiuza's heartbeat almost skipped a beat. But before he could respond, Cheng Xue walked straight towards Fang Yi. Oh no. Zhang Qiuza's expression changed, but he did not have an attack. Originally, he had never taken Fang Yi seriously, and his impression of him only existed when Fang Yi came on stage as the first student representative to speak. At that time, Fang Yi still looked like an ordinary boy. At best, he could be described as high-spirited and talented. Zhang Qiuza had to admit that Fang Yi was indeed better than him in studies. But since Fang Yi lost his sight and dropped out of school, this person was like a flash in the pan, and suddenly faded out of everyone's sight. Unexpectedly, after Fang Yi returned to school again, Cheng Xue, who had always been polite and distant from him, would have a completely different attitude towards this boy. In what way am I inferior to Fang Yi? I heard that his family still owes a lot of debt. After a while, Lan Yuan and Yu Tu arrived belatedly, and Yuan Yi's eyes lit up. Lan Yuan was uncharacteristically different today, wearing a simple sportswear. He was slim and tall, and he didn't look very heroic. Even Taro had a look of reluctance on her face. She was wearing the same sportswear as her sisters. It looked like the 2 of them had just come over from playing badminton. Since everyone is here, let's eat first. I specially called a few Michelin chefs. Zhang Qiuza extended his hand in a gentlemanly manner. Yeah, I know I'm going to have a good meal today. One of the petite girls cheered. Her name was Li Yueru, and she was friends with another girl wearing JK, Yang Ming. Her personality is enthusiastic and outgoing, and she is commonly known as Xinyo. She can get along well with many classmates in the class, while Yang Ming's personality is much quieter and more reserved. After entering the banquet hall, there is a 10-meter-long dining table filled with flowers and candles. The lights are dim, and the air is filled with high-end woody fragrance. Lan Yuan and Cheng Xue naturally sat on both sides of Fang Yi, just like they did every time in the cafeteria. The faces of the boys present turned dark, and the girls with the most beautiful feelings were all surrounding you. Although Fang Yi didn't understand the source of Zhang Qiuza's inexplicable hostility towards him, but that didn't matter to him. While Li Yueru had already taken dozens of photos with everyone, in addition to several waiters carrying dinner plates, there was also a waiter wearing half a mask and holding a violin. Oh my god, the quality of 5-star hotels is high. This waiter is very handsome even if he is wearing a mask. Li Yueru lowered his voice and said to Yang Ming, really? Phew. The water in Lan Yuan's mouth almost spurted out. Others may not be able to see it, but Lan Yuan can still recognize this person even if he turns into ashes. Chapter 28, Part 1. Because this waiter holding a violin and wearing half a mask is no one else. It was her brother Lan Mu. What's wrong? Taro looked confused and blind. Nothing. Lan Yuan picked up the handkerchief and pursed his lips. Fang Yi looked strange when he saw the familiar pair of phoenix eyes under the mask. Suddenly, I understood why Lan Yuan came here wearing sportswear. He was afraid that some pig would take advantage of his sister's cabbage. Lan Mu turned his eyes, glanced at the boys present, and quickly stood aside. His eyes were wandering, as if he didn't have 300 taels of silver in this place. Qiuza, happy birthday. Yuan Yi grinned and handed over his gift. The rest of the people suddenly realized and handed over the gifts they had prepared. Even Chung Shui took out a beautifully wrapped small box from the small bag she carried. Do you still want to prepare gifts? Taro innocently took out 2 badmintons from his pocket and handed them to Zhang Qiuza. Here, a gift from me and Lan Yuan. Are you two really going to play badminton? Fang Yi asked. Yes, Lan Mu had to drag us there so early in the morning. Lan Yuan lowered his head and typed quickly on his mobile phone. Thank you. Zhang Qiuza twitched the corner of his mouth and took the 2 badmintons. However, he didn't expect the 2 women to give him anything. It would be a great honor for him to come. Classmate Fang Yi, have you prepared a gift? Zhang Qiuza smiled. It doesn't matter if you don't prepare. After all, everyone knows the situation in your family, and I won't accept anything too expensive. Indeed, classmate Zhang Qiuza is very considerate. As for gifts, it mainly depends on your intentions. I think this badminton sent by classmate Lan Yuan is very good. Yuan Yi immediately agreed. Although everyone gave gifts, they were not too expensive. Half of the people present were ordinary families, so the value of the gifts was naturally not very high. Taro almost laughed out loud when she heard this. She whispered into Lan Yuan's ear, if you even agree to a badminton game, he won't like you. Lan Yuan's hand paused. I don't understand. Chung Shui's eyes turned cold. She felt that the 2 of them were singing along, targeting Fang Yi intentionally or unintentionally. Could it really be true? Zhang Qiuza pretended to be sad. Others present looked at Fang Yi. Even as slow as Lan Yuan, he still felt the strange atmosphere. She doesn't care about gifts or not. No matter what others think of her, she doesn't care. Besides, what can she give to people she doesn't know well? As long as everyone spends money in the hotel, everyone will be fine, so no one owes anyone. Hey, this is for you. Fang Yi suddenly had a warm butterfly knife in his hand, and the corners of his mouth twitched, and he still carried it with him. If you give it to me, then you will only have a handful left. Oh, it's okay. I still have a lot more, as much as this one. Lan Yuan said expressionlessly. You can also give me a discount. Oh. Lan Mu's face almost turned green when he caught a glimpse of their little movements under the table. My sister doesn't care about this either. How can I give a weapon tied to my thigh to someone else? Ahem. Let me first play the violin piece Lake Baikal that Mr. Fong ordered for everyone. Lan Mu, who looked unhappy, emphasized the word Mr. Fong with great force. He finally understood that the protagonist of today's banquet turned out to be that boy Fang Yi, and it was still a matter of jealousy. Chung Shui's eyes were stunned. Xiaoya, have you been here? I've been here before. Fang Yi responded helplessly. The brother and sister were not like this every day or two. They did whatever they wanted. What? Yuan Yi and Fat, who both stared at Fang Yi. This kid has actually been to a 5-star hotel? Zhang Qiuza looked at the masked waiter suspiciously. When he came over to take care of the meal, he didn't seem to have seen this person before. Isn't this a service that should have been there in the first place? Performing requires extra money, 1,000 for each piece. Lan Mu lied without changing his face or heart. Wow, classmate Fang Yi, you make it look like the gift we gave you is vulgar. Liu Eru watched the excitement and didn't take it too seriously. Zhang Qiuza leaned back in his seat angrily. A waiter appeared out of nowhere. He had no eyesight at all. Lan Yuan held the water glass and looked at Lan Mu with disgust. Because Lan Mu knew how to play Lake Baikal, and he was famous all over the university campus by relying on this song, but her ears were almost ringing with noise. After the song ended, Lan Mu reluctantly left the banquet hall, because if there was one more person at the scene who ordered the song, he would be exposed. After everyone finished eating, they sat in the karaoke room of the hotel. The quiet and reserved girl Yang Meng sang surprisingly well. In addition to her, Yuan Yi and another boy Amu also sang well. Zhang Qiuza did not choose to embarrass Fang Yi while singing. Who knows if Fang Yi's singing is good? If so, wouldn't I give him a chance to perform? By the way, Qiuze, what game are we going to play next? Liu Eru was very excited. I used to like to play scripted killer games, escape rooms, and the like. Yuan Yi and Fat, who also looked at Zhang Qiuza. Even they didn't know what Zhang Qiuza had planned. Zhang Qiuza smiled mysteriously. Actually, it's not a difficult game to understand. It's a game I played when I was a child. It's called Cat and Mouse Game. Everyone looked at him in confusion. Ahem. Zhang Qiuza cleared his throat, and the KTV accompaniment suddenly became much quieter. There are 12 of us here, and we can be divided into 3 teams, namely cats, mice, and cheese. The cheese team will be divided into 2 groups and randomly hidden in 2 rooms in the hotel. The mouse team has the wild card of the hotel room, so they need to find the cheese team's hiding room and open it. As the cat team, to protect the cheese team, they need to catch the mouse team. But the mouse team cannot be touched by the cat team. The mouse team members who are touched by the cat team will join the cat team, and there is a mouse team spy in the cat team. The spy can expose the cat team's location by leaving a secret code, but be careful not to be the cat team members found out. The game is not over until the mouse team finds the cheese team, or the cat team captures all the members of the mouse team. If the cheese team is found, they will be punished together with the cat team. What is the punishment? Yuan Yi and Fat Hu were in high spirits after hearing this. The losing team must meet the 3 requirements of the winning team. Zhang Qiuza said lightly. Sounds pretty good. Taro smiled with squinted eyes. How to decide the team members? Let's draw lots. Zhang Qiuza didn't want Lan Yuan Taro and Cheng Shuwei to directly choose to be paired with Fang Yi, so he didn't have to play. Zhang Qiuza quickly asked the waiter to bring him the lottery tube he had prepared in advance, and Fang Yi didn't bother to put any thought into the lottery. It sounds like since it is a chasing game, it is impossible for him, Lan Yuan and others to lose as sequencers. The results of the draw are as follows. Cheese Team, Zhang Qiuza, Fat Hu, Dada, Yang Ming. Cat Team, Lan Yuan, Taro, Yuan Yi, Li Yueru. Rat Team, Fang Yi, Cheng Shuwei, Xiaoshan, AMU. Chapter 29, Part 1. Looking at the result of the draw, Fat Tiger looked very unhappy. He thought that Zhang Qiuza would do something secret and arrange himself and Cheng Shuwei to be in the same group, but why did she go to Fang Ye's group instead? Cheng Shuwei was very happy and stood beside Fang Yi with a sign in her hand. Great, we are in a group. You may not be familiar with the 2 boys and girls in our group. I can introduce them to you later. Good. When the time comes, I will ask the hotel staff to secretly give the room card and spy identity to the rat team. Now we can disperse. Zhang Qiuza said. By the way, I have installed shielding equipment in the hotel. Don't think about winning by exchanging messages. What? Lan Yuan's face darkened. Didn't this hit her right in the middle? Is it too late to withdraw now? The Crown Hotel is very large, with 21 floors. But what was different in the hotel was that there were no other guests. I don't know if it's because of the last attack by Pandora and the hotel has just been repaired. So Qiao is not open for check-in yet. I don't know what means Zhang Qiuza used to let himself come over in advance to book the hotel. Zhang Qiuza had already arranged the staff in advance and waited until the 3 teams were on different floors. Start the game after counting silently for 60 seconds. Zhang Qiuza and Fat Hu entered a room from the stairwell. Fat Hu couldn't help but say, I thought you would put me and Cheng Shuwei in a group. What's going on? Zhang Qiuza glared at him angrily. So what if you two just stay for a while? Put Cheng Shuwei in the rat team, and you can make demands after they lose. But with this allocation, we may not win. Fat Tiger was very anxious at the moment. It was not until he saw the monitoring screens in front of him that his eyes widened. Do you think they can really find the 2 of us from the cheese team? This is the control room. You don't need a room card in the control room. Just watch their performance quietly and wait for victory. Since they are cheating in school, I can also cheat here. Zhang Qiuza said with a proud smile. Fat Tiger couldn't help but compare his thumbs. Brother Qiuza is still awesome. Yang Ming and Dada, both on the cheese team, chose any room on the top floor. Lan Yuan glanced at the backs of Fang Yi, Cheng Shuwei, and others disappearing into the elevator, with a pale look on his face. Yuan Yi on the side came up, feeling secretly happy. Since the cat team wants to capture the rat team, let's work separately. This will be more efficient, or I will be in a team with Lan Yuan, you Ruyu. Team up with classmates Taro. Before Lan Yuan and Taro could express their opinions, Li Yueru understood and hurriedly pulled Taro, who looked strange, to the other side of the hall to wait for the time. Taro-san, there are spies in our cat team, but I believe you are not. Taro twitched his lips when he heard this clumsy test. Do you have anything else to tell me? Lan Yuan frowned. Yuan Yi's face heated up and his heart beat like a drum. Wait a minute, you two. A waiter wearing a mask came over and stood between the 2 of them. Although the corners of his mouth curved in a polite arc, the coldness of his aura made Yuan Yi couldn't help but shudder. He couldn't help but look up and down. Isn't this the waiter playing the violin? What's up? The 3 of them stared at each other for a while. Lan Yuan holds his forehead. Lan Mu smiled, pretending to lift the watch on his wrist, and glanced at Lan Yuan with a pair of phoenix eyes. 60 seconds have passed, and the game begins. So fast? Yuan Yi was surprised. Why did he feel that 20 seconds had not passed yet? Fang Yi, Cheng Shuwei, Xiaoshan and AMU from the rat team were already standing on the 10th floor of the hotel. The cat team is in the hotel lobby. We can only search upward from here first, right? Xiaoshan said timidly. She is the Chinese language learning committee member in the class, and the only person she interacts with is Zhang Qiuza, who is the monitor. In such a scene, she seems a little at a loss. But Xiaoshan felt a little annoyed at the moment. Why didn't she draw the cheese team? It sounds like the rat team is the most difficult. She has to open the door to find the cheese team and avoid the cat team. She's really not good at it. No. AMU denied. The cat team may be divided into 2 groups. One group searches from top to bottom, and the other group searches from bottom to top. If you search from top to bottom, you may get dumped. Oh, I'm sorry. Xiaoshan's face turned red. If she had known better, she would not have spoken first. If it is consistent with AMU's conjecture. Cheng Shuwei smiled. With the area of the first floor of this hotel, we can let 2 people look out at the elevator entrance and the stairway respectively. so that the probability of being seen will be smaller. Besides, there is a spy from our mouse team and the cat team, Xiaoya. What do you think? Okay. Fang Yi didn't have much objection, then let's search normally. 2 boys, AMU and I, will look out. They're here. Xiao Shan exclaimed as he looked at the floors with changing numbers. Taro stood in the elevator that was going up, looking helpless. She and Lan Yuan know this crown very well. Since they are assigned to the cat team, do they still need to look for it? She had reason to suspect that Zhang Qiuza had tampered with the lottery, but he had arranged for himself to be on the cheese team, so he could rest easy. Classmate Taro, when we get to the top floor, let's look down from the stairwell. People from the rat team shouldn't dare to take the elevator. It's too easy to be discovered. Li Yueru took Taro's arm affectionately. Taro looked at a loss as to what to do. She originally thought she was very familiar with it. I didn't expect there was someone outside. Zira, AMU and Xiaoshan opened the doors one by one. After searching the entire 10th floor, Cheng Shui frowned. This search was too inefficient. She turned her beautiful eyes and looked at Fang Yi. It seems that we have to guess which floor the cheese team will be hiding on. Let's start the search from the top floor. The members of the cat team should no longer be on the 21st floor. Fang Yi said, I think it's better to search layer by layer so that it's not easy to miss. Moreover, we are easily spotted whether we take the elevator or take the stairs. AMU retorted. Well, I agree with classmate AMU. Xiaoshan tugged at the corner of his clothes uneasily, or else he would just let the cat team catch him if he didn't follow Zhang Qiuza's request. Then let's split up. Xiaoya and I will take the elevator up. Cheng Shui wished for it. Okay. AMU nodded, so that he no longer had to act in front of Fang Yi and the others, and could naturally become a member of the cat team. Fang Yi had no expression on his face, turned around with Cheng Shui, and parted ways with the two of them. He already understands. It is impossible for the rats to win this game. Cheng Shui stood on tiptoe in the elevator and whispered in Fang Ye's ear, Do you also think they will join the cat team? Zhang Qiuza and Pang, who looked at the two people in the elevator moving intimately on the surveillance camera, their eyes almost brimming with fire. Zhang Qiuza took a deep breath, not sure whether he was comforting Fat Hu or himself. It's okay. When the rat team loses, my first request will be for Fang Yi to kneel down and imitate the barking of a dog. The people from the rat team are above us? Li Yueru shouted excitedly as she watched the numbers on the elevator change. How dare they take the elevator? They are on the 20th floor. She and Taro quickly rushed to the 21st floor from the stairwell, but there was no one in the long and narrow corridor. Why is there no one? Li Yueru opened her mouth. Taro turned her head sharply with a vigilant expression, and she seemed to feel something flash from behind. Illusion? Chapter 30, Part 1. Fang Yi and Cheng Shui, who were on the 21st floor, opened the hotel room doors with their universal room cards. No one is there, not even here. I don't know how many doors were opened, but a strong sense of disobedience surged into Fang Ye's heart. He stopped what he was doing and stood still. Oh no, what's wrong? Do you have anything I can mark with? Is this okay? Cheng Shui immediately understood Fang Ye's thoughts. She took out a lipstick from her small bag and handed it to Fang Yi. Fang Yi took the lipstick, drew a circular logo on a wall, and then stood up. The two of them walked a full circle along the wall of the corridor. It was not until they saw the circular sign left by Fang Yi that Cheng Shui was shocked to realize that they were back to the same place. However, even the elevator entrance and stairwell were missing. But it seems that it would not be bad if I could stay with Ono like this all the time. Look at these house numbers. Fang Yi said softly. Cheng Shui turned her eyes and froze on the spot. Why are they all the same number? Is this also arranged by classmate Zhang Qiuza? This was not something Zhang Qiuza could do. Fang Ye's eyes turned cold. We are trapped on the 21st floor. It seems that something strange has gotten in. Cheng Shui pursed her lips, her face slightly red. Xiaoya, I'm a little scared. Can you hold my hand? Fang Yi hesitated for a moment, then stretched out his hand. Although they are currently trapped here, they have not encountered any danger yet. If it is really a disaster, Lan Mu, Lan Yuan, and other ferrymen will still be here. However, this is Qiao's territory. Why does air appear? Before Fang Yi could think more, a broadcast with a distorted tone and a sizzling electric sound echoed in the corridor. Qi's team Dada and Yang Ming were eliminated. It turns out that everyone is still playing games normally. Cheng Shui was immediately relieved. Feeling the heat in Fang Ye's palm, the girl lowered her head and thought a lot, and the huge happiness almost went to her head. It's best to keep the two of them here so that Ono can be with her forever. Is this the broadcast you made? Hearing the same broadcast from the monitoring room, Fat Hu looked at Zhang Qiuza, who was also confused, in confusion. I'm right next to you. Why are you making a broadcast? Zhang Qiuza adjusted the monitor angrily. After Cheng Shui and Fang Yi stepped out of the elevator, they could no longer be found. What's going on? In the room, Dada and Yang Ming from the cheese team were stunned when they saw the door being opened. No, they didn't even sit on the sofa to warm themselves up. How did you the rat team, find it so quickly? Are we just bait? After the door was opened, no members of the rat team came in. Dada and Yang Ming looked at each other. Could they be playing some trick game? As Dada's body gradually hung in the air, Yang Ming pouted. Hey, why are you like Yueru? Stop scaring me. You don't have to work so hard to play tricks, right? Help save me. Dada fluttered his limbs, and his eyes suddenly became bloodshot and turned scarlet. Yang Ming was a little hesitant now. Looking at Dada's appearance, she was a little unsure whether he was playing tricks or not, because Li Yueru often did this and could scare her every time. Are you all playing so big? You just scared me, okay? If you do this, I will be angry. Having said that, she still reached out and tentatively grabbed Dada's body. She felt an irresistible force and pushed Dada to the ceiling. Looking at Dada's gradually expanding body, Yang Ming fell to the ground. This time she was really frightened. Don't be like this. Why don't I stop playing? I give up. Bang. With a soft sound, Dada's body exploded like fireworks, and the warm, salty body fragments and blood instantly poured over Yang Ming's head and face. Yang Ming touched the blood on his face in confusion and helplessness. After looking at the miserable scene in front of the mirror in the room and his own appearance, he realized that this was what really happened and was not a prank. But she was just an ordinary high school girl. She had never seen such a bloody and terrifying battle. Next, it's you. Feeling the strange whisper in his ear, Yang Ming's pupils suddenly shrank to the size of a needle tip. Ah, she screamed and crawled out of the room. Hey, someone showed up on the 21st floor. Zhang Qiuza perked up. Did that boy Feng Yi find Team Cheese hiding on the top floor? Well, you know they are of no use. Team Cat hasn't caught anyone from Team Rat yet. Isn't this Yang Ming? Looking at the blood-stained and frightened girl under the surveillance camera, Fat whose eyes widened. He tried hard to turn his not very good brain. This plasma is quite realistic. I didn't arrange the prank scene? Zhang Qiuza was stunned. Only now did he realize who arranged that broadcast sound. Fat Tiger's strong body trembled. Damn, don't scare me? Is it possible that a murderer sneaked in? Zhang Qiuza suppressed his chaotic thoughts and forced himself to calm down. Don't talk nonsense. How could a murderer sneak into a place like this? Besides, even if there is a murderer, it's not something we two can solve. Until Yang Ming, who was under surveillance, ran desperately. The next second, she fell to the ground, struggling and wailing like a fish that jumped to shore, as if some sharp weapon had penetrated her abdomen and was nailed to the spot. Fat Tiger stood up suddenly and shouted, "What the hell is this? Is this a horror movie?" He grabbed Zhang Qiuza's shirt collar. Don't tell me, this is what you expected. The girl dragged her body and climbed forward inch by inch with difficulty. Even the intestines in her abdominal cavity were exposed. Save me, Wu. I don't want to die. When the two of them saw each other, they couldn't hold back their stomachs. Zhang Qiuza's face turned pale as he grabbed a garbage bag and kept vomiting. Soon, an unpleasant smell filled the monitoring room. This is not the category of murderers. Zhang Qiuza's face turned sallow, and he sat back on the chair. His body was shaking like chaff, and his lips were trembling constantly. He looked at Fat Tiger next to him, who was staring at the monitoring room closely, with the corners of his mouth raised and his hands rubbing nervously. Hey, are you laughing? Zhang Qiuza's chrysanthemums tightened. Looking at Fat Tiger's strange mental state, he had to admit that he was a little overwhelmed now. When Fat Tiger woke up from his dream, his expression changed. Smile. I'm born with smiling lips. But, we have to go out and save people. I'm not going. Zhang Qiuza roared uncontrollably. If you want to go out and die, go out alone and don't drag me along. 10 minutes ago, Lan Yuan quietly tightened his pocket, and Lan Mu secretly stuffed the rat spy card into her. She looked at Yuan Yi, who had just told her a lot of nonsense, then ran forward to explore the road diligently with a silly smile on her face and sighed. What's going on? Are you a rat team spy? Yuan Yi suddenly turned around. Ah. Lan Yuan was shocked. He was discovered just because he sighed? Don't worry, it's because the waiter's technique is too clumsy. Yuan Yi smiled. Lan Yuan glanced aside expressionlessly. Oh. Yuan Yi spoke to herself, classmate Lan Yuan. Although you speak very little, your thoughts are surprisingly easy to guess. My only strength is that I am very good at observation. No, what I actually want to say is that I fell in love with you from the first day I saw you transfer to another school. But you were always staring out the window in a daze. At first, I thought you were looking at Feng Yi, but I found out later. It turns out, you were looking at that door too. Chapter 31, Part 1. I don't understand what you were talking about. Lan Yuan calmly distanced himself from Yuan Yi. Ah, what a pity. Seeing Lan Yuan's subtle reaction, it seemed that Yuan Yi had expected it. He lowered his head in despair. Actually, I wasn't sure just now, but now, I am sure. But when I eat you, we can be together forever. Lan Yuan felt a chill after hearing Yuan Yi's words. She didn't think he had any feelings. They only have instinct. Boring. As Lan Yuan's butterfly knife rotated and rushed toward him, Yuan Yi's right arm spurted out a spray of blood. Faint? Looking at Lan Yuan, who had a light figure and disappeared in front of him in an instant, Yuan Yi's eyes were sinister. Classmate Lan Yuan, don't run. Lan Yuan hid in a blind spot in the stairwell on a certain floor, looking surprised and uncertain. Her left eye flashed with golden light, and her chest rose and fell slightly. The situation has become serious, and she must meet up with Feng Yetao as soon as possible to find the remaining people. Xiaoshan and AMU, who had separated from Feng Yi and the others, were now on the 9th floor. Amph casually put the universal key card on the door lock. If Zhang Qiuza hadn't promised him to take over his homework for a month, he wouldn't have bothered to come over and help Zhang Qiuza become the so-called actor. Why hasn't the cat team come here yet? Xiaoshan kept looking around. Who knows? Mu curled his lips. Hey, why can't this room be opened suddenly? Could it be that the cheese team people were found by the two of them by mistake? AMU was speechless. He took a few steps back and tried to knock the door open directly. Is someone from the cat team here? I heard footsteps. Xiaoshan was overjoyed. Mu paused, looked at the stiff boy, and frowned slightly. How could he move alone? Classmate Yuan Yi, why are you injured? Xiaoshan looked at Yuan Yi's bleeding right hand and opened his mouth. This needs to be bandaged quickly. Can the game be paused at halftime? At this moment, Yuan Yi looked crazy and confused, and his expression seemed to be crying or laughing. Yuan Yi? AMU asked tentatively. The lights in the corridor were extinguished one by one with the sound of Yuan Yi's footsteps, looking at the darkness sweeping in, and Yuan Yi's facial features gradually torn apart. AMU was not stupid enough to think that this was some kind of special effect. Run! He roared angrily, and the little shirt next to him realized later. The two of them didn't know how long they had been running on this corridor, as if there was no end. Xiaoshan, who was running out of energy next to him, cried, I can't run anymore. Amu pursed her lips and glanced at the dark figure behind her. Her steps did not slow down at all, and she did not pay any attention to her. Until I bumped into the group of Taro Liyueru. Hey, aren't these people from the rat team? I caught you. Liyueru grabbed their arms excitedly. Are you looking for death? AMU gasped and gritted his teeth, wishing he could kick Liyueru away. Yuan Yi followed closely behind him. He had no facial features, and his face was completely occupied by a mouth full of compound teeth. Why is he here? Taro froze. Looking at the clothes that belonged to Yuan Yi, she instantly understood. It seems that Lan Yuan has already fought with him. Unexpectedly, an air sneaked in among the classmates. Taro pulled the confused Liyueru and Xiaoshan and rushed into the elevator with AMU. Seeing Yuan Yi suddenly speeding up, Xiaoshan looked horrified and kept pressing the close button. Sure enough, with Yuan Yi's speed, the moment the elevator door closed, a hand was pulled between the cracks in the door. Xiaoshan screamed, retreated to the corner of the elevator and cowered, like a quail. Mu's face turned pale, and he mustered up his courage and was about to kick him up. Rebuke. Taro shouted softly. In this case, she didn't care about exposing her identity as a ferryman. As the barrier was activated, a square transparent light mask enveloped the small elevator. Seeing that the hand he stretched out was repelled by an inexplicable force, Yuan Yi opened his mouth and roared, making a different tone of voice. I'm so lucky to be a sequencer again. Ha 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 ha. But do you think you can really escape? As the elevator door closed, Yuan Yi's voice gradually faded, and the four of them were in shock. What's going on with Yuan Yi? Liyueru was a little crazy. She and Yuan Yi were relatively close, and she didn't understand why Yuan Yi suddenly became like this. Tara classmate, what did you just perform? Is it magic? Shut up. AMU frowned. This girl was very noisy. Since there is such a thing as Yuan Yi, it is natural for Taro to know how to use some magic. As a bad boy in the class, AMU always has a bad mouth. Liyueru also understood the situation and said nothing more, turning to comfort Xiaoshan. I want to leave this hotel. I want to leave here. I want to go home. Xiaoshan finally reacted and cried so hard. After the elevator reached the first floor, as the elevator door slowly opened, Xiaoshan pushed away Taro and AMU who were standing in front of him, held the door open and rushed out. When everyone took a closer look, Xiaoshan's body was still running, but blood was pouring out from the section on his neck. Her head was gone. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the three people in the elevator suddenly became very exciting. Because of the person standing in front of me. It's actually Yuan Yi. This idiot. Looking at Xiaoshan's slowly falling body, AMU was shocked and angry, and kept secretly pressing the elevator door button with his fingers. Yuan Yi, why did you kill all the students? Liyueru screamed. Classmate. Yuan Yi's face changed back to its original appearance. Since we are all classmates, you should take priority. No. Okay. Liyueru's teeth chattered. Unless? Unless what? Li Yueru caught Yuan Yi's words and asked eagerly. It seems that Yuan Yi has not completely turned into a monster. I heard that Taro and Lan Yuan have a good relationship. Give her to me as a hostage, and then tell Lan Yuan that she is in my hands, and let her come to me on her own. Yuan Yi smiled with narrowed eyes. Lan Yuan? Li Yueru was stunned. She had always known that Yuan Yi had a crush on Lan Yuan. She turned her head and glanced at the Taro, and nodded hurriedly like a chicken pecking rice. Okay, then don't kill us. The sales were so fast. Taro twitched his lips. He thought Li Yueru had a pretty good personality and was carefree. Although self-preservation is human nature, Taro still has a slight backache. My life is not life. Really stupid. AMU immediately regretted not kicking Li Yueru away just now. If Taro, the only one who knew magic, was caught by the monster Yuan Yi, then the two of them would basically declare over. While AMU was thinking, he raised his foot and kicked Li Yueru out of the elevator without hesitation. Just die. As long as you don't die by yourself. He is not a religious man. Looking at the closed elevator door, Li Yueru, with disheveled hair, rushed forward and started beating him. Unfortunately, the door is completely closed. Ah, Mu Yang, you bitch. She turned around tremblingly and looked at Yuan Yi's face with a forced smile. Yuan Yi, we have such a good relationship, do you really want to kill me? But look, even they have abandoned you. Yuan Yi shrugged. They abandoned me, but it's enough that you won't abandon me. Li Yueru's smile was uglier than crying. Taro did not choose to go directly to the top floor this time. When she reached the 8th floor, she pressed the button. It is too easy to be discovered by taking the elevator. Let's take the stairs from here to meet the remaining people. She didn't have any objections to Mu Yang's actions. There weren't many high school students who were so ruthless these days. Even if Mu Yang doesn't kick Li Yueru out, she won't be a hostage obediently, etc. Mu Yang paused and watched as Taro quickly pressed all the buttons in the elevator without asking any questions. Chapter 32, Part 1. Yuan Yi did not kill Li Yueru. It's not because the two of them really had any friendship before. Yuan Yi thought that keeping her might be of some use. A slender waiter holding a long knife and wearing half a mask blocked the path of the two people in the middle of the stairs with a smile. I heard that a rat got into our hotel. Is it you? Why is it you again? Looking at the long knife in the waiter's hand, Yuan Yi took a few steps back in a panic. You can't be the murderer, right? You killed our classmate. Li Yueru on the side lowered her head and remained silent. She finally managed to save her life. As long as she pleases Yuan Yi, the death of others has nothing to do with her. It's all the fault of Mu Yang who kicked her out of the elevator. It's all his fault. Seeing Xiaoshan die in such a miserable way, staying next to Yuan Yi made her suffer extremely every minute and every second. Yes, I am a perverted murderer. The waiter touched his chin and nodded heavily. Ah. Li Yueru was startled when she heard the words echoing in the stairwell. Is there such a straightforward murderer? Could it be that God is helping her? But, I only kill men. Get out of here. The waiter raised his arm and shook the tip of the knife at Li Yueru. Li Yueru glanced at Yuan Yi secretly and saw his untroubled face. She felt happy and hurriedly walked away from the stairs. Let this murderer and that monster Yuan Yi fight like dogs. After watching Li Yueru leave, Lan Mu looked up and down Yuan Yi's body with frivolous eyes. Hey, is it you who is plotting against my sister? I see you really want to eat swan meat. I'm just telling you why I was so unhappy when I first looked at you. Look at your shoehorn face, your pig kidney nose, your garlic eyes, tsk. Yuan Yi's face darkened. He was bombarded and physically attacked by Lan Mu. The clay figure was also very angry, not to mention that he was not a human being. No, why does this murderer talk so much? Your sister? Lan Yuan's beautiful and cold face flashed through Yuan Yi's mind. The man in front of him already knew that he was he. Are you kidding me? You are also a sequencer. Yuan Yi was furious, looking at Lan Mu's indifferent phoenix eyes looking down at him, feeling dazed for a while. It is an epidemic, and we are fighting a disaster. We are ready to eliminate it. As a brilliant sword light lit up from behind him, Yuan Yi was horrified. He didn't even notice when this person came. This sequencer is much stronger than Lan Yuan and Taro. If this knife goes down, he will die. Help me, Yuan Yi yelled. After a space fluctuation that Lan Mu was all too familiar with appeared, Yuan Yi disappeared from the spot, and his sword also failed. As expected, there are still accomplices. Lan Mu smiled strangely. Even Yi has joined forces. It seems that what Uncle Qiao said is indeed right. This old fox is still as good at tricking people into working overtime as ever. Fang Yi clearly felt that the carpet under his feet slowly wetted his shoes, emitting a fishy smell. It smells like blood. Cheng Shui seemed to feel it too. She silently leaned towards Fang Yi, who gave her a comforting look in return. How to leave the 21st floor? Fang Yi frowned and tried the universal key card again. The door that could be opened just now could not be opened now. He leaned over and looked around the corner, and sure enough, even the mark he had made with Chang Shui's lipstick was gone. This is no longer the 21st floor they just stayed at. Xiaoye. Chang Shui pointed to the other side, covered her mouth and exclaimed. Fang Yi turned around and looked. His pupils suddenly shrank. At the end of the corridor, a girl climbed out of the darkness with a strange expression and a miserable look. She seemed to be unable to see the two people at the other end of the corridor. He raised his head and looked somewhere steadily, not knowing what was being said in his mouth. As her body suddenly hung in the air, all the joints in her body were folded into unnatural shapes like a doll, making a heartbreaking clicking sound. Isn't this Yang Ming who has a good relationship with Li Yueru? What happened? Chang Shui was surprised and confused. In the next scene, even Fang Ye's pupils couldn't help but tremble. Don't look. Fang Yi covered Chang Shui's eyes. Yang Ming's body was like a torn towel, gradually being twisted into an extremely twisted twist. A large amount of blood poured on the ground, and her lifeless and deformed body fell softly from the ceiling to the carpet in the corridor, making a dull sound. Fang Yi couldn't help but feel some acid reflux in his throat, and even the smell of rust in the air was as permeable as real substance, pouring into his nasal cavity. Sweet and fishy, decadent. Can you promise me something? Fang Yi said. What? Don't open your eyes until I say something. Fang Yi hesitated for a moment. Although this approach was very covert at the moment, maybe that was the only way to break through. No matter what, he had to try. It would not be too late to explain to Chang Shui afterwards. Good. Chang Shui was stunned for a moment, but she obediently followed Fang Ye's request and closed her eyes. She felt that she was not far away from Fang Ye's secret. As a blazing heat came over her face, her heart skipped a beat. The blazing fire reflected half of her face red, and the thin air made it almost difficult for her to breathe. Is there a fire? Chang Shui wanted to open her eyes and take a look, but she remembered her agreement with Fang Yi and subconsciously took a few steps back. However, she fell back without weight. The long corridor under her feet had turned into a twisted space of tens of thousands of feet at some point. Snowy. When Chang Shui opened his eyes, Fang Ye's face was filled with shock and anger. Chang Shui spread her fingers, trying to grab Fang Ye's outstretched hand. Seeing how eager he was for her, she couldn't help but have a gentle smile on her face. Next time, remember to hold me tight. The girl's words floated, and her figure fell away like a kite with its string broken. Looking at the corridor that had swallowed up Chang Shui and turned it into its original state, Fang Yi looked gloomy. As the dark lines on his back opened and clawed, flames surged in his palms. The curtains, hanging paintings, and everything in front of you were instantly ignited. Even Yang Ming's body burned, making a crackling sound and the smell of burnt protein. Under the high temperature, Fang Ye's eyes wearing black contact lenses felt extremely uncomfortable, and the whites of his eyes instantly became covered with fine red blood streaks. No, you have to take it off first. Fang Ye's expression changed. If he didn't take it off, the flames would probably burn his contact lenses directly into his eyeballs. He can only pray that no one will show up to him for a while, otherwise. No matter who it was, he had no choice but to take action. The raging fire reflected in Fang Ye's blood-red cross eyes swallowed up the darkness at the end of the corridor, tearing the darkness apart at the moment. He then saw Yuani sitting on the ground, looking like he was surviving a disaster. Chapter 33, Part 1. Hey, why isn't Yuani in the hotel? Taro paused. Could it be that he had already encountered Lan Mu and was slaughtered? Mu Yang behind him immediately asked, Really? Well, after he touches my barrier, he will leave the aura of the curtain on his body, but now this aura has disappeared. Mu Yang breathed a sigh of relief. He still believed in Taro's magic, and it saved his life. Let's go back to the hotel lobby first. Maybe we can meet someone who survived. When Taro and AMU returned to the hall, they saw Li Yueru hiding in the corner and shivering. You're not dead? Mu Yang frowned. Li Yueru, who was still trembling, saw the two of them and rushed over screaming, punching and kicking Mu Yang. Go to hell! Go to hell! Mu Yang looked stern. Compared to the petite Li Yueru, who was only about 1.8 meters tall, she looked more and more like a little chicken. He unceremoniously kicked Li Yueru over again. You still have the nerve to scold me. You can even betray Lan Yuan and Taro, who are classmates, and eat the inside out. I'm not familiar with them in the first place. Li Yueru stared at her red eyes and burst into tears. I don't want to die. Idiot. Mu Yang cursed secretly, but turned his head and stopped talking. Soon, Lan Yuan appeared in the lobby with an expressionless face, and Taro was filled with surprises. You, Lan Yuan. I'm really scared. How come the person who likes you is still a poisonous way? It almost scared me to death. Lan Yuan couldn't help but look around the hall. Where are the others? I don't know. We have never seen Fang Yi, Cheng Shui, and Yang Ming and Dada. Mu Yang said. Could it be? Taro was surprised. The situation is very complicated now. The person who spoke was Lan Mu, who suddenly appeared behind everyone. Mu Yang's body trembled, and he was frightened. No, when did this waiter come out? You? Why are you here, you murderer? Li Yueru, who also saw Lan Mu, screamed and immediately hid behind Lan Yuan Taro. Killer? Lan Yuan glared at Lan Mu, who looked innocent, and rubbed his temples helplessly. In this situation, her brother was still in the mood to play cosplay to scare people. He's my brother. Your brother? Only then did Li Yueru have the energy to look at Lan Mu's face carefully, especially those cunning phoenix eyes, which were indeed very similar to Lan Yuan. Hello, don't be afraid. I saved your life after all. Lan Mu smiled shamelessly. The complicated feeling of the aftermath of the disaster swept through Li Yueru's body. She was both delighted and devastated. Although she is indeed fine, someone did die. Apart from her long-term classmate Yuan Yi, who is a monster, her good sister Yang Ming is still alive and dead, and it is not known whether she was killed. Where's that thing from Zhang Qiuza? Are you still hiding in the monitoring room? Li Yueru, who knew that she was out of danger, was extremely excited now. She couldn't care less about Zhang Qiuza picking up girls. Control room? Lan Yuan frowned and looked at each other in tacit understanding. When Li Yueru came back to his senses, Lan Yuan and Taro were no longer in the hall, and even Lan Yuan's brother was no longer there. Only she and Mu Yang stood there and stared, looking at the balloons and banners in the hall, as well as the headless corpse in a pool of blood. Li Yueru felt a chill in her back, a sense of horror, and the admiration she felt at the beginning was no longer there. She subconsciously leaned towards Mu Yang, with a pitiful look on her face, trying to find some topic to ease the tense atmosphere between the two of them. You know, I saw? Get lost. Mu Yang said bluntly. The monster Yuan Yi was no longer in the hotel, so he had nothing to be afraid of. He walked to the door of the hotel with long legs and tried to leave directly. As soon as he stepped into the revolving door, his forehead seemed to hit an invisible wall. What the hell is this? Mu Yang touched his forehead in pain. If you are a sequencer, looking from outside the hotel, you can see a huge square black barrier covering the entire Crown Hotel. It looks airtight, like a ghost. Although this barrier looks like a small pixel square against the background of the prison door, the difference is that even birds will fall down if they hit it. Have you finally started taking action? Xiao squinted his eyes, and he and Ah Huan stood outside the cordon and stared at the suddenly raised barrier. Zhang Qiuza looked at the countless screens in the monitoring room, each of which turned into the shape of snowflakes and made a crackling sound, and felt a chill. Because those countless tiny black and white particles, connected by the screen, are faintly connected into the shape of an eye. Fat Tiger, where have you been? Zhang Qiuza was horrified. Fat Hu, who had been by his side, now disappeared. Squeak, the door of the monitoring room was opened. Zhang Qiuza looked at the keys on the table, his body shaking like rice chaff. Thinking of Yang Ming's tragic situation, he almost lost control. Don't kill me. Zhang Qiuza squatted down with his head in his hands and cried. He doesn't want to die. He doesn't want to die. Why do you do this to him? Then tell me, what is the purpose of your birthday? Fat Tiger, Yuan Yi and I just wanted to embarrass Fong Yi. I really didn't want to harm him. Why embarrass him? That damn Fong Yi is such an eyesore. Cheng Shui is my thing. At the mention of this, Zhang Qiuza yelled regardless. There was silence in the air for 10 seconds. Huh. He's not dead yet, Zhang Qiuza realized belatedly. He raised his head and looked tremblingly at the person standing in front of him who asked him those questions. It was Lan Yuan and Taro who looked disgusted. Why are you here? Seeing the disgust on the faces of the two women, Zhang Qiuza felt shocked and embarrassed, but at the same time he also felt a touch of joy. He wasn't going to die, was he? Well, those words just now were not said by me. A monster controlled me. This is how Yang Ming died too. It seems that the matter has been resolved. Lan Yuan showed no expression as he kicked Zhang Qiuza aside and called up the surveillance video. What a wonderful speech. Taro shook the mobile phone in her hand. Although the mobile phone had no signal, she still recorded everything Zhang Qiuza said. Looking at the mobile phone in Taro's hand, Zhang Qiuza's face turned pale. Well, if you sell it to me for 10,000, can you not give it away? You think my sister is short of 10,000 yuan? Taro said proudly. 50,000. Ah. Taro looked a little excited, which gave Zhang Qiuza another glimmer of hope. 80,000. He begged. This was the most money he could afford. He really didn't have any more. Taro, stop teasing him. Lan Yuan frowned. We will not make this recording public, but at least the person involved will be aware of it. Seeing Yang Ming's miserable condition on the screen, Lan Yuan's face turned pale and he drew away. Why could everyone's surveillance cameras be seen? But Fang Yi and Cheng Shui disappeared after they walked out of the elevator. Taro, come here and take a look. Oh. Zhang Qiuza stared at the backs of the two women in front of him with resentment in his eyes. If this recording was released, then he and Chang Shui would really be doomed. From the countertop behind him, he secretly took out a small knife that he had planned to use to cut the birthday cake. He has already worked hard and fought for it, and it's all their fault. It's all their fault for being ignorant. Just like Fang Yi. Anyway, so many people have already died, so 2 more shouldn't matter, right?
Loving the audiobooks? Your support on Patreon helps me keep them coming. Check out the link in the description. A huge thank you for your support. Now, let's dive into the next chapter.
Chapter 34, Part 1. A maniacal smile appeared at the corner of Zhang Qiu's mouth. The moment the knife stabbed Taro in the back of his heart, his vision went dark and his body fell softly. Hey, why are you two always so careless? Lan Mu tapped his shoulder with the back of his knife, looking helpless. No need. Lan Yuan remained the same as before. Because he just wanted to stab me first, right? Taro's face was expressionless. She always felt that this scene seemed a bit familiar. It might have happened too many times. So, what happened, Lan Mu? Can you explain it? Lan Yuan turned around and looked at Lan Mu faintly. Ahem, how do I know? I just came here to play with you kids. Who knew someone would sneak in? Lan Mu's expression was unnatural. Well, it seems it's time to find you a brother-in-law. You are still unreliable as a brother. Taro sighed. Who dares? Looking at Lan Yuan, who didn't object, Lan Mu's eyes widened. We are all members of the Wuching home team. I didn't expect that we would be isolated after all. It's time to quit. What's the point of staying in such an impersonal organization? Listening to Taro's tea talk, Lan Yuan deeply agreed. The 2 of them wished they could cut off their robes and belts and leave here right now. Oh, let me go, that's all I said. Lan Mu raised his hand helplessly. Say it, the 2 women said in unison. Lan Mu sighed. Xiao thinks that Pandora's people may have colluded with Ida. What? Taro's eyes widened. This was simply unheard of. Pandora was indeed a bunch of lunatics. So does it have anything to do with Zhang Qiu's birthday party? Lan Yuan asked. Yes. Lan Mu nodded, his eyes unclear. Do you still remember that when Pandora attacked last time, Xiao Fang burst out with huge energy and regained his sight? Lan Yuan looked at Lan Mu in confusion. So? Xiao noticed Xiao Fang's side, conducted a thorough search of his home and school again, and discovered something. Put it out quickly. Taro couldn't stand Lan Mu's showy attitude anymore. But it has nothing to do with Xiao Fang, but I found something else. Lan Mu touched his nose angrily. We discovered that there are 2 people in your class who have strange experiences, because you were transferred to the school later, so you don't know much about it. Prior to this, they were survivors of a fire in a resort village in the past 2 years. That doesn't mean anything, right? Taro frowned. Originally I couldn't explain anything, but now I can explain it. Because besides the 2 of them there was another survivor. Joe and I want to find him. According to the survivor's description of the situation in the resort at that time, not only was it highly similar to the situation when Joe was attacked by Pandora's explosion, but it was also exactly the same as what happened at the birthday party now. The survivor said that everyone kept fighting against the wall. Although they were all in the same room, they could not see each other and could not escape from the resort, so that everyone was burned to death inside. Combined with the current situation, there is evil mixed in. The reason the survivor survived was simply because he fell into the basement and was left behind by the 2 of them. Perhaps there were other newly awakened sequencers present at that time, so he was not noticed. But these were just speculations before. Unexpectedly, Zhang Qiuza actually came to your door with your list. Later, I pretended to be a waiter and entered your banquet, so as to prove Xiao's judgment. Lan Yuan rubbed his eyebrows. He originally thought that Yuan Yi was dead and the work was over, but he didn't expect this to happen again. Then why didn't you tell us in advance? Because you 2 have poor acting skills. Lan Mu looked innocent. Go to hell. You think you're good at acting just by pretending to be a waiter. Taro scolded angrily. So, besides Yuan Yi, the other E is... Before Lan Yuan could speak, Taro suddenly raised his head. Fat tiger? Otherwise, it would be unexplainable that 12 people were divided into so many groups in different places in the hotel, but the space changed just right every time. Separate everyone and kill them one by one. From this point of view, only Fat who was hiding in the monitoring room with Zhang Qiuza, could do it. The 2 women looked at each other. What kind of strange ability is this? However, the only thing that can be determined is that Fat Tiger is a high-fighting heir of unknown origin. Lan Mu said. Finally, I heard a piece of useful information from Lan Mu. Gao Zhan Yi? Then why doesn't Uncle Qiao come? Taro was horrified. Couldn't it be that these people in the hotel could be easily killed? Isn't this just a case of rushing to death? That Gao Zhan Yi doesn't seem to be good at fighting, and the mission rating hasn't even reached S yet. I'm enough. Lan Mu was proud, but Taro rolled his eyes hard. But Xiao said that the E might be the rarest type of dream among E's, and he doesn't know its specific abilities. The reason why he almost didn't come out of the explosion was that the infinite space overlapped, and it was impossible to tell whether it was reality or an illusion. It just so happens that this ability is extremely restrained by Uncle Chiao's indestructible. Fortunately, Huan, who has a certain resistance to hallucinations, was present, so he was able to rescue him from the explosion caused by Pandora Gold in a dangerous way. This is also the reason why Uncle Chiao suspects that Pandora and Yi are colluding together. It is impossible for such a coincidence to happen at the same time. I see. As they felt the changes coming from the hotel, the expressions of the three people changed. It seems that we no longer need to find these two heirs. Lan Mu murmured, but he was a little confused in his heart as to why Yuan Yi and Fat Hu had been hiding for so long, chose to attack head-on now. Thinking of the knife blow just now, Yuan Yi was still a little shocked. He had already asked that person to find out. In this hotel, Lan Yuan's brother was the only one he could not contend with. As long as you avoid him, he will tease everyone else to death like a cat and a mouse. As long as he eats Taro and Lan Yuan, the two sequencers, he can transform into a high-level E. It won't be too late to deal with the waiter then. This time the cat was the only one. Fang Yi. Yuan Yi looked as if he didn't see him, and Fang Yi quickly stepped away from him with a smile on his lips. Isn't this the Fang Yi he hates the most? I really understand him, and sent him here. As Fang Yi glanced around, the flickering green lights of the elevator and the stairs slowly emerged, letting him know that he was no longer in the ghostly space on the 21st floor. Don't leave in a hurry, mouse. Yuan Yi quickly reached out and grabbed Fang Ye's shoulders. I'm a cat now, you're out? Chapter 35, Part 1. Fang Yi paused, broke free from Yuan Yi's hand, and pushed open the stairwell door. He is not in the mood to talk too much with Yuan Yi now. Cheng Shui is in danger now, and he must find her immediately. Boring. I'm not in the mood to play games with you right now. After hearing Fang Ye's words, which were the same as Lan Yuan's, blue veins popped up on Yuan Yi's forehead. A sinister smile appeared on his face, and he clasped Fang Ye's shoulders again. He didn't want to kill Fang Yi all at once. After all, he agreed to Zhang Qiu's request. I am quite trustworthy in some respects. Didn't I say, you are already out? Looking for death? Fang Yi turned his head with a cold expression. In the dim stairwell, Yuan Yi suddenly saw the blood-red cross pupils, and his heart was trembling. Eye of calamity, he screamed. Fang Yi didn't expect that things would turn out like this. He narrowed his eyes slightly. Are you an E or a sequencer? Ha 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 ha. Hearing Fang Ye's question, Yuan Yi laughed wildly. Fat Tiger, did you hear that? As he laughed, the space around the two people distorted uncontrollably. The ground under Fang Ye's feet instantly turned into an abyss no different from Cheng Shui's before, and he fell into it together with Yuan Yi. The howling wind filled Fang Ye's ears, and thoughts were flying in his mind at this moment. Yuan Yi should be E. Since he called Fat Hu's name, the space immediately changed, which means that it was Fat who controlled the space before. Two E's? Fang Zi was stunned. As the spinning weightlessness swept through Fang Ye's body, the scenery around him changed, and he actually returned to the hall. Standing on the spiral staircase in the hall were two young men, one thin and one fat. They were none other than Fat Hu and Yuan Yi. Fang Yi turned his eyes and saw Cheng Shui, who was unconscious at the side. What is your purpose? Fat Tiger smiled while tossing the gadgets in his hand. I just wanted to kill you, but I didn't expect to catch a big fish. No wonder our first seat wants you so much. The classmates in the class should have no grudges against you, right? Yuan Yi was stunned for a moment, then burst into laughter. He needs a reason to kill people? To us, they are just pets that can make people happy. Will you be sad because your pet dies? Besides, who would have thought? Yuan Yi marveled. There are actually two ferrymen and a monster hidden in my class. But don't worry, we won't kill you now. Won't you kill me? Fang Yi sneered. After all, there are many people who want you. Fat Tiger rubbed his palms. Are you willing to join Pandora? If you don't want to, you can. I do. Fang Yi interrupted Fat Hu expressionlessly. Then what? Yuan Yi and Fat Hu froze on the spot, looking at each other in confusion. Fat Hu had a shit-eating expression on his face and suppressed a lot of threatening words in his stomach. Why is the development different from what I imagined? Shouldn't we rather die than surrender? Ahem, are you sure? Fat Tiger was suspicious. I'm sure. Fang Yi frowned, even though he had agreed. What else did he want to do? Okay, then you should kill her first to show your determination to join Pandora. Yuan Yi's eyes wandered over Fang Yi and Cheng Shui. Anyway, everyone present will die before Pan's barrier is lifted. Why didn't you let him kill Lan Yuan first? Fat Tiger's mouth twitched. Dish? Fang Yi keenly captured what Fat Hu said. He squinted and saw that the thing in Fat Hu's hand was an eyeball made of unknown craftsmanship with green pupils. Looks like an ordinary glass bead. Is it this gadget that keeps them breaking the wall at the Crown Hotel? Besides, it is impossible to kill Cheng Shui. Fang Yi looked coldly at the two people who were ignoring him and arguing at the side, and raised the corners of his mouth. Since there is a barrier here, he doesn't need to hide anything anymore. His other sequence ability, Scorching Heat, under the stimulation of the dark pattern of thorns, can maintain the second stage, which is 20% development. The ability, Plunder, from the dark world can only push 1% of the development rate. But for the current situation where there is only E, it couldn't be more convenient. Fang Ye's thinking only lasted for a moment. He rushed out like a cheetah, picked up Cheng Shui, who was unconscious and leaning aside, and placed her in a corner of the hall far away from the others. I knew this kid had regretted it, Fat Tiger shouted, his tone unclear whether he was happy or angry. Yuan Yi was too lazy to deal with his pig teammate. His face tore open and turned into a big mouth, and his limbs turned into sharp-jointed limbs at the same time, rushing out like an arrow from a string. The fat tiger beside him did not turn into the same terrifying monster state, but just waited and watched what happened next. Even if Fang Yi has the eye of disaster, he also didn't think that Fang Yi could escape from him and Yuan Yi, who was in the middle of the war. He was still too young. Fat Tiger narrowed his eyes. Can't help but think of Pandora's first seat. That person is also the only person in the entire sequencer world who has signed a contract with disaster. No one knows how he did it, and no one knows what his abilities are. Therefore, his abilities are also divided separately by the ferryman. Disaster sequence number 001. Unexpectedly, a second one actually appeared. As circles of black runes swayed from Fang Ye's body, the bloody crosses in his eyes became more and more strange and scarlet. Yuan Yi and Fat, who felt terrified. A strange, ominous, and twisted feeling of depression came from the front. Yuan Yi felt as if his feet were stuck in a swamp, and it was even difficult to breathe. Fat Tiger looked at Fang Yi in surprise. He does have a strange and weird aura about him now, which is consistent with the rumors that the first person can travel through the dark world. But something is wrong. It was completely opposite to the aura of the first seat. Why is this kid so evil? Yuan Yi was in a bad mood. I don't know why, but my fighting power is suppressed by the weird runes on Fang Ye's arm, so that I can't fully exert it. Which adult in the dark world has this ability? Hey, how long do you want to watch the show? Yuan Yi roared. But I'm not good at fighting. Hearing Fat who's muttering, Yuan Yi was almost furious to death. Fang Yi looked stern when he saw Fat Tiger about to take action. He couldn't let two evils take action at the same time. Otherwise, he would really have no chance of winning. He and Cheng Shui had the deepest experience of Fat Tiger's abilities. After all, under Fat Tiger's checks and balances, he had circled the 21st floor of the crown many times and ghosted against the wall many times. In addition to the 21st floor where Cheng Shui's lipstick was marked, there are also the 21st floor where I met Xiaoshan, and the 21st floor where I met Yuan Yi, all in different spaces. He was not sure whether Fat Tiger was really creating space, or whether Ah Huan's ability illusion was giving people the illusion of infinity. But Fang Yi prefers the latter. We have to deal with Fat Tiger first. He is more difficult. Chapter 36, Part 1. Let me test my current abilities with you. As those black runes wrapped around Fang Ye's arms like physical chains, his fists ignited two clusters of red to black flames, and the sleeves on both sides of his sweatshirt. It also turned into ashes instantly. Fang Ye's flaming fist instantly scorched some of Yuan Yi's flesh and limbs, blasting him against the wall, and an unpleasant smell emitted from the air. Fortunately, the hotel lobby is quite spacious. If it were a room of nearly 100 square meters, all the flammable materials in the room would be instantly ignited. Fang Yi didn't notice while he was constantly attacking and dodging. A thin layer of sweat slowly appeared on the cheeks of Cheng Shui, who was unconscious. As long as they can deal with him in one go, Lan Mu and Lan Yuan will find him soon. This kid is not only a contractor of disaster, but also has that weird ability. How can he control the flame sequence? The flames that suddenly emerged from Fang Ye's fists made Fat Tiger's pupils suddenly shrink to the size of a needle tip, and he looked shocked and unbelievable. Ha ha ha, this world is really interesting. Looking at Fang Yi rushing towards him, a crazy smile appeared on the corner of Fat Tiger's mouth. His hands suddenly clasped together, and his chubby face no longer looked as innocent as before. As he twisted his palm, Fang Yi felt a sharp pain coming from his leg bones. His expression changed, and he felt an irresistible force, like an invisible big hand twisting his left leg into a twist. Just like the original shirt, Fang Yi instantly overturned all his conclusions. Fat Tiger's ability is not something similar to an illusion. His calf was literally twisted off. He fell from midair and fell hard on the cold marble floor. Fang Yi raised his head. His eyes were red, and a thin layer of sweat broke out on his forehead. You are not E. Eh. Fat Tiger smiled strangely. When did you get the illusion that I was E? I didn't say. I am E. Yuan Yi bared his teeth. As his body slowly returned to its original shape, He walked over and raised the only arthropod arm that had not returned to its original shape, raising it high on Fang Ye's head. You are a member of Pandora? Fang Ye's voice was hoarse. He didn't expect that Pandora's people would actually collude with Yi. Fat Tiger squatted down and patted Fang Ye's face. Alas, he is really a young disaster contractor and a sequencer, but he is still too young. Although you don't plan to join our organization, even I can't help but be a little jealous of you. Fang Yi glared at Fat Hu fiercely, but Fat Hu's figure did not disappear from the hotel lobby. His eyes stung. It seemed human beings cannot be transferred to the dark world. He is not Yi. Fang Yi closed his eyes, and 2 lines of blood overflowed from the corners of his eyes. It seems that you wanted to use something just now. Seeing Fang Ye's strange behavior, Fat Tiger stood up expressionlessly. He was not willing to bear the dying counterattack of a disaster contractor. I am a very kind-hearted person. Fang Yi, remember my name before you die, and then come to me for revenge after you die. I am the 20th owner of the god sequence of embodiment, and I am also the 5th among the 10 bishops of Pandora, codenamed Jason. Fang Ye's eyelids trembled. Even though things were developing as he expected, he never thought that Fat Tiger was actually a contractor of the gods. Yuan Yi, kill him. As Fat Tiger finished his sentence, although Yuan Yi was dissatisfied with the order, his actions did not slow down at all. The sharp flesh and blood limbs stabbed at Fang Ye's head with a whistling sound. When Fang Yi opened his eyes, he only saw a slender figure with a floating skirt standing in front of him. It's Cheng Shiwei. Her body was directly penetrated by Yuan Yi's flesh and blood limbs, and she was able to block the attack for Fang Yi. Fat Tiger's expression darkened, but he didn't say much. Because he is no longer a high school student Fat Tiger. Cheng Shiwei. Fang Yi was shocked and angry, and the blood from the girl's chest and abdomen dripped onto his face. Oh no. Looking at the bloody cross in Fang Yeli's pupils, blood spilled from the corners of Cheng Shiwei's mouth, but she still smiled gently. It seems that you have hidden a lot of things from me. Is this your secret? With trembling pale hands, she gently wiped away the blood on Fang Ye's face. Ahem. Is it because Lan Yuan and Taro also know about it? So, you treat them differently? Stop talking. Looking at Cheng Shiwei's appearance, pain spread from Fang Ye's heart. You will be fine. Fang Yi endured the pain in his calf, limped and gently leaned Cheng Shiwei against the pillar in the hall, and turned his gloomy eyes to Yuan Yi and Fat Hu. Fortunately, it seems that Cheng Shiwei was not fatally injured. If he could get treatment in time, his life would not be in danger. Call. As Fang Yi exhaled, the temperature in the hotel became higher and higher, and even bursts of scorching wind blew up out of thin air, lifting everyone's clothes. Just like that day on the viaduct. Feeling the sudden rise in temperature, Fat Tiger was startled and uncertain. He had only seen such a strong sense of sequence pressure from 2 people, one of whom was the ferryman's Dinghai Shenzhen, Fang Qintian. The other one is Pandora's first seat. Until the dark pattern on his back was extremely hot, Fang Yi stepped hard on the ground with 1 foot and jumped out, appearing in front of Yuan Yi within a few seconds. Looking at Fang Yi, who was obviously much faster than before, Yuan Yi was shocked. It's over. This wave is for me. The 2 of them were knocked out like a rubber ball until they hit the mural in the hall. Fang Ye's arms bound by black runes did not ignite fire this time, but used the remaining force to hit Yuan Yi's face hard one after another. The strange suppressive force made Yuan Yi dizzy and felt extremely aggrieved. This is Fang Ye's first attempt to use the mysterious woman's ability against Yi. The last time it was used was against sequencer Li Lu. The result of that time was that he usurped his sequence ability, Scorching Heat, and this time, Fang Yi didn't know what would happen. Plunder. As Fang Yi finished speaking, black runes wrapped around the 2 of them like spider webs. Yuan Yi's expression suddenly became horrified, because after those black runes entangled him, he couldn't move. Moreover, he felt that his power was gradually disappearing. Yuan Yi struggled to look at Fat Hu, who had an indifferent expression. He obviously had no intention of saving Fang Yi until he understood Fang Ye's abilities. Damn Pandora. He actually used him as a stepping stone. Yuan Yi's eyes were about to burst. The moment Fang Ye's plunder ability was activated, even Fang Yi himself didn't notice that a mouth appeared in his palm. No, I don't want to be swallowed up. Yuan Yi looked at his gradually deformed and shrunk body and kept screaming. He finally remembered whose ability this was. The band disaster leader, Greed. How could her ability appear in a human being? Chapter 37, Part 1. Under the stunned gazes of several people, Yuan Yi's body slowly diminished, until Yuan Yi exploded and turned into a pool of black liquid, which disappeared into the palm of Fang Ye's arm. Both Fat Hu and Cheng Shiwei on the field were stunned. Fang Yi retracted his hand and looked at his unchanged palm, feeling a little nauseous. This kind of feeling of swallowing people alive is a bit difficult to accept even for Fang Yi. He could even feel that Yuan Yi's unwillingness and fear were still faintly rising in his heart. At the same time, He actually felt that his plunder development rate had been increased by 1%. Which disaster contractor is he? Fat Tiger is simply unheard of. He kept looking at Fong Yi. Under the current situation, Yuan Yi was dead, and his first priority was no longer to kill the ferryman and the girl who was the contractor of the gods, but the young man in front of me. This time, not only was Fong Ye's identity as a disaster contractor confirmed, but the tip of the iceberg of his strange abilities was also exposed. If he can't serve Pandora, then he must not stay. Fat Tiger kept turning the dish in his hand. The scene fell into a strange stalemate and silence. Except for the embodiment that he has used 3 times so far, he borrowed the rule ability of Dan to form barriers to separate them, which also caused a lot of consumption on him. Although his god sequence has reached the second stage of 38% development, his mental power is limited after all. However, as the 5th seed of Pandora, there is no doubt about his strength. Fat Tiger's eyes flickered on Fong Ye's face. He was hesitating whether to kill Fong Ye on the spot or kill a few ordinary sequencers before leaving here. I found the weakest point. In the silent hotel lobby, there was suddenly a vague rustling sound, as if separated by a film of water. Fong Ye's eyes flickered, and it seemed that the effect of the dish in Fat Tiger's hand had begun to gradually weaken. That was Lan Mu's voice. It should be found by Lan Yuan's god sequence, cause and effect. The next moment, Fat Tiger's body slowly rose into the air. His expression was intoxicated, as if he was accumulating power for some big move. Fong Yi calmly took out the black contact lenses from his pocket and put them on. Since the Eye of Disaster was useless to humans, he took this opportunity to cover up, to avoid being caught by Lan Mu and the others who broke in. Stab. Within 10 seconds, the barrier behind Fong Yi was torn open like a piece of paper. As the barrier created by Dan was torn apart inside, the huge black barrier covering the crown also shattered. Xiao, who was leaning on a black business car outside the hotel, looked at the scene. After taking a deep breath of smoke, he dropped the cigarette but between his fingers on the ground and crushed it out. Let's go. Ah Huan looked at the cigarette butts on the ground at Xiao's feet and sighed helplessly. Can't you report this person for littering? Inside the hotel, Lan Mu, who broke the barrier in time, broke in with a knife, followed by Lan Yuan and Taro. When Lan Mu broke through the barrier of the dish, Lan Yuan saw countless tiny light particles gathering towards Fat Tiger. His divine tattoo is on his right wrist. Those light particles floating in the world are something that only those with divine contracts can see, and this is also the reason why they are different from ordinary sequencers. Not only can it be driven, but it can also be absorbed. Lan Yuan looked at the scene in front of him. Although he was shocked, he quickly appeared beside Fong Yi and Cheng Shui with Taro, and left the battlefield with the seriously injured 2 people. Didn't Lan Mu say that Fat Tiger is a high-fighting disaster? Oh my god, Gao Zhanyi is actually by my side. Thinking of how we all ate and sang together before, Taro's face turned pale. Before Taro could finish his words, Lan Mu, who had the most combat experience among them, had already used space folding to appear behind Fat Tiger. Before his knife touched Fat Tiger's neck, a huge divine pressure came from Fat Tiger in front of him, and Lan Mu even felt tiny needle pricks coming from his own skin. There was a moment of confusion on his face. Isn't this person a good fighter? Everyone saw that Lan Mu's knife seemed to be experiencing some resistance, and even his whole body seemed to be pressed to a slow speed. He is the owner of the 20th manifested god sequence. Fong Yi endured the pain, and his hoarse voice shocked Lan Mu. No. A bunch of people were trying to guess how they ended up at Grandma Lu's house from the Grandview Garden. Fortunately, he still swore to Lan Yuan Taro that Fat Tiger was Gao Zhan's evil, and his reputation would be ruined again. After Fat Hu saw Lan Mu out of the corner of his eye, just one palm rested on Lan Mu's blade, making it difficult for him to swing the sword at all. The ferryman has enough flies. The next second, a terrifying wave came from the blade, and Lan Mu was instantly bounced away. Fat Tiger looked sarcastic. Although it is a disaster weapon, it is a pity that it has the wrong owner. In your hands, it is like a child's toy. As a contractor of the gods, and at the peak of his development in the second stage, he did not bother to fight against ordinary sequencers, which was why he let Yuan Yi play. His usual hobby is to kill ordinary people. Using the bizarre ways of death he has seen in horror movies to manifest themselves in ordinary people is what he looks forward to most in his boring life of playing an ordinary high school student. He liked to see them running away, crying, and collapsing. He thought those deformed and twisted bodies were beautiful. This is also the bad taste behind his codename, Jason, in Pandora. However, Cheng Shui was one of the few women he was interested in, and he couldn't explain why. Really like a fly. Fat Tiger looked at Lan Mu, who disappeared again in midair, and clasped his palms together. When Fong Yi saw Fat Tiger's action, his pupils shrank and he roared immediately. Run. He's about to use his power. What exactly is the ability to manifest? Taro murmured, looking at Fong Yi, who rarely lost control of his emotions. Fang Yi didn't know what medium Fat Tiger used to activate revelation, nor did he know how far the effect range was. This was a rather exaggerated and tricky ability. Looking at Lan Mu, who was slashing with his knife again, and Lan Yuan, who was charging towards him with a butterfly knife, Fat Tiger had a cruel smile on his lips. This time, even God will pay special attention to him. His ability has broken through the second stage and reached the third stage at this moment. A development level of 40% has been achieved. What are you two still doing? Run! Fang Yi roared. As he turned his palm, the sound of cracking bones was heard, and Lan Mu's limbs were instantly bent into unnatural shapes. Fang Yi trembled and slowly closed his eyes. Chapter 38, Part 1. The seriously injured Fang Yi and Cheng Shui had already been shrouded in Taro's barrier. Her barrier seemed to have a repair function. Although it was very weak, it was enough to prevent their injuries from worsening. Fat Tiger's eyes were excited and bloodthirsty, ignoring the feeling of weakness that came over his body. He actually reached the third stage at the last minute. Although the consumption of using revelation to kill two people at the same time was quite large, what was left was only a few defeated soldiers. He won. It seems our Wuching ferryman team is going to be wiped out. We don't seek to live together, but to die together. Taro smiled bitterly. No one expected that Pandora's fifth-ranked Jason would be lurking beside them, waiting for an opportunity. Because no one has seen the 10 bishops of Pandora, even if they know their subordinates well, even the people inside Pandora don't know what these 10 bishops look like or their names. Those bishops wear various masks all year round in Pandora. Mysterious, powerful, cruel, and unscrupulous. It is synonymous with them. Seeing Fang Yi beside him struggling to stand up and limping out of his curtain, Taro rushed forward and pulled Fang Yi's arm. Fang Yi, what are you doing? Kill him. Fang Yi looked calmly. Taro opened his mouth and finally let go of his hand, and then blessed Fang Yi with a barrier. Cheng Shui, who was unable to regain any strength due to excessive blood loss, looked at Fang Yi's back and her face turned pale. Let Xiao Yi come back quickly. Since she stepped into this hotel, she has received too much information, but right now she can't care about anything else except Fang Yi. Taro blinked and his expression moved slightly. It's okay. I believe Fang Yi. There's nothing to be sad about. After all, you can go down with them soon. Fat Tiger sneered. As he clasped his hands together again, Fang Yi roared, rushed forward desperately, and pounced on Fat Tiger. He felt a sharp pain in the joints of his limbs, and he fell heavily on the steps. He tried his best to reach out and grab Fat Tiger's ankle. Is this your last struggle? Fat Tiger lowered his head and taunted. The golden barrier belonging to Taro on his body broke instantly, blocking a fatal attack for Fang Yi. Fang Yi raised his head and stared at Fat Hu, gritting his teeth and showing a crazy smile. The high temperature suddenly rose, and the flames erupted from the palm of his hand and swept through Fat Tiger's whole body. You don't think that this kind of gentle flame like a bath will be useful to me, do you? Fat Hu laughed maniacally as he watched Fang Yi's body twisting and turning until it was deformed. Puff! A clear blade penetrated his heart. Fat Tiger turned his head slowly, his face full of astonishment. Is it you? You're not dead? Lan Mu, who was standing behind Fat Tiger, grinned. With a flick of his wrist, the blade of the blade immediately shattered Fat Tiger's heart. It seems that the heart of a divine contractor is no different from that of ordinary people. He vomited a pool of blood, his eyes were red, and he stared at Lan Mu like a wild beast. The latter shrugged. Don't you know? Sometimes, children's toys can also hurt people. It wasn't until Fang Yi's body continued to fade and disappear before Fat Hu's eyes that Fat Hu realized it later. Is this an illusion? Bingo! Lan Mu snapped his fingers. The real Fang Yi and Lan Yuan slowly emerged from the Taro barrier, both of them looking a little unsightly. No one wants to see him die so miserably, except for that heartless Lan Mu. This may also be some of the bad tastes of Ah Huan, the owner of sequence number 99, Dreamland, the most taciturn in the team and the one who likes to stay up late. When exactly is it? Fat Hu couldn't help coughing up blood. When is it? Joe smiled and stepped into the hall, followed by a young man with thick dark circles under his eyes. You have to know that when people are most proud, they often cannot see something. So, was that time? Fat Tiger laughed at himself. It's time to pay for the uproar in my hotel, Jason. No, I haven't lost yet. Fat Tiger roared, frightening Lan Mu who was behind him. How did this kid not die even after being stabbed through the heart? The divine contractor is indeed perverted. Do you think that the contractors of the gods are something ordinary sequencers like you can get your hands on? Even though Fat Tiger was fatally injured, the god's dark pattern on his wrist still maintained his last vital signs. He glanced at everyone grimly. His expression suddenly became extremely painful, and his black eyes were gradually occupied by the whites of his eyes. A terrifying, desolate, and ancient aura emanated from him. He wants to use the forbidden technique of the gods. Lan Yuan exclaimed. Xiao looked at Fat Tiger with interest, and immediately threw out a mini silver cube from his suit pocket, which he got from the woman after a lot of effort. As the silver square rapidly grew in size, Fat Tiger was included in it. I don't know what happened in the inner space, but within 3 seconds, the silver cube fell apart, revealing a confused Fat Tiger. Why was his sacrifice interrupted? Uncle Xiao, what kind of fun is this? Lan Mu's eyes widened. Your sister Long Tong's ability. Lan Mu's shoulders shrank when he heard the name, and a woman who looked like a robot with a cold and delicate face suddenly appeared in his mind. Oh, it seems that our divine contractor of the 4 seasons is slightly better. Xiao Mo stroked his chin. As the dark lines of the gods on his body continued to fade, Fat Tiger finally fell to his knees with a plop due to the fatal injury to his heart, with a face full of unwillingness and resentment. No breath at all. Number 20, Manifestation. The owner of the god sequence died. Fang Yi, Lan Yuan, and Cheng Shui Taro all looked a little heavy. I thought it was an ordinary birthday party. Who would have thought? This weekend was obviously too ridiculous and bizarre. Since the game started, a long night of chasing and killing began. Several people who participated in the game and got caught up in it were even more exhausted physically and mentally. The identities of cat and mouse are constantly changing, and there is no real winner at the end of the curtain call. Fang Yi hesitated for a moment. Looking at Fat Tiger's body, he was ready to make a move. If the ability of embodiment could also be used by him, he walked over slowly, raised his hand to lift up Fat Tiger's body, and his pupils shrank suddenly. How so? Everyone took a deep breath when they saw Fat Tiger's hollow facial features and his gradually softening skin. I heard that if a divine contractor dies without completing the contract, even if he violates the contract, the price will be his own soul. I didn't expect this rumor to be true. Xiao's voice was low. This is the first time I have seen a divine contractor deprived of his soul. Lan Mu looked at him curiously. How disgusting. Taro pouted. Lan Yuan remained silent, staring blankly at Fat Tiger's body. In front of this hollow and terrifying skin, Fang Yi didn't feel a trace of sequence power, and he frowned. It seems that the ability of the divine contractor cannot be plundered. Chapter 39, Part 1. At this moment, outside the Crown Hotel, a young man wearing a black suit, with a fair complexion and a thin body, looked frightened and looked timid. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. In front of him stood Mu Yang, who was half a head taller than him, but had a dull look on his face. Suddenly, the young man hit Mu Yang neatly on the back of the neck with his palm. Mu Yang rolled his eyes and fainted. Please forget everything that happened in the past 2 days. The young man muttered while dragging Mu Yang's body and slowly walked to a black business car. It doesn't matter. The painful memories will disappear when you wake up, the young man murmured, wiping the sweat on his forehead. In addition to Zhang Qiuza and Li Yueru who were staggering around in the backseat of the car, there was also a cute-looking little loli who looked to be no more than 10 years old sitting in the passenger seat. Her eyes are a strange red, like crystal-clear gems, and her face is delicate and cute, more like a pampered little vampire princess in a certain castle in the movie. The little Lolita was wearing a complicated palace Gothic dress, holding a lollipop in her hand, and curiously looking at the 3 people in the back seat of the car. Her voice was clear and crisp, but the words she spoke made the young man's temples jump. Brother Chengzi, where did you pick up these 3 bastards? Xiao Yuan, please don't say bad words. The young man looked helpless. Xiao Yuan pouted. Where is Sister Lan Yuan? I miss her very much. You'll see her soon. The young man closed the car door and sat back in the driver's seat. He cursed in his heart. He couldn't bear this day of being a nanny. After Fat Tiger was completely dead, Fang Yi was finally relieved of all the burdens on his body. The twisted calf was a little numb due to the rapidly rising adrenaline during the battle. At this moment, fierce pain hit him, causing Fang Yi's vision to go dark and he almost fell down. Lan Yuan, who was beside him, quickly supported Fang Yi with quick eyes and hands. Uncle Qiao, the surviving Zhang Qiuza, Mu Yang, and Li Yueru have already left the hotel. I'm afraid they... It doesn't matter. Pan Cheng has found them and cleared and tampered with the memory of the past 2 days. Xiao glanced at the message received on his phone and smiled slightly. In addition, the owner of sequence number 88, Activity, is present. Xiao Feng, and the female classmate's injuries will soon recover. Xiao glanced calmly at Cheng Shui, whose breath was weak in the Taro barrier. This girl could be said to have witnessed the whole process. I don't know how she feels at this moment. You stupid Taro, were you the last one to discover Ah Huan's illusion? Lan Mu winked and moved closer to Taro. Fart, I've noticed it a long time ago. I don't seek to live together, but I seek to die together. Ah, Lan Mu, go to hell. Taro was embarrassed and annoyed. Looking at Lan Mu's mean look, he stomped his feet angrily. Lan Yuan, look at your brother. Brother Mu, don't laugh at me. It's embarrassing to be slapped and knocked away with a knife, right? Ah Huan sniffed. That's right, If you don't work hard to improve your development in sword skills, you will just be an errand boy from now on. Lan Yuan looked disgusted. Okay. Joe smiled and clapped his hands. This time we have successfully surrounded and suppressed the 5th seat of the 10 bishops of Pandora, Jason. Even in the 4 seasons, it is a great achievement. On Monday, I will send the bonus to everyone's account, which can be regarded as a reward for you. Bonus? Fang Yi raised his head in confusion. How many? You really love money. Xiao laughed heartily and then raised 5 fingers. Fang Yi was disappointed. 500? But it was better than nothing. Xiao's expression rarely lost control. Xiao Fang, do you think I am such a disrespectful person? It's 50,000. 50,000? Fang Yi was stunned for a moment, then fainted with a look of happiness on his face. Tisk, you look like this kid has no future. Lan Mu was amazed and waved his hand proudly. Give my share of the bonus to Xiao Fang too. Then give mine to Fang Yi. Lan Yuan Qingqing said coldly, originally, I didn't do much in this incident, so I was disrespected. Taro's eyes widened when he heard this. No, you two filthy rich second generations already have money. I won't be infected by you, and give it to Fang Yi together. I still have a lot of little treasures in my shopping cart waiting for me to take home. Cheng Xue stared blankly at the few people laughing and cursing in a harmonious atmosphere. She lowered her head involuntarily, lowered her eyelashes and looked slightly dim. Oh no, is this why you joined them? Sunday at 3 p.m. Several people came to a villa under Qiao's name. He and Ah Huan stayed at the scene to deal with the remaining mess of the Crown Hotel. When will they come? Lan Mu had already changed out of the waiter's uniform. He and Taro sat on the sofa, crossed their legs and poked at the fruit plate in front of them. Lan Yuan glanced at the time and said calmly, now. Sure enough. Sister Lan Yuan. The crisp little lowly voice sounded outside the door, and Lan Yuan stood up helplessly and opened the door. A small figure instantly hung on her neck and kept rubbing between her neck, making Lan Yuan feel itchy. A pair of bright ruby eyes, very much like a kitten. Madoka, you're here? Well, Sister Lan Yuan, do you miss me? Certainly. Oh, Madoka can only send you messages on her mobile phone every day, and our captain won't let me join the Wucheng team. He is such a big bastard. Taro's face suddenly looked strange. How could this little lowly speak so vigorously? A thin young man stood outside the door and sighed quietly. Madoka, I told you not to use bad words. Can you go in first? Oh, Pancheng, it's been a long time no see. Lan Mu appeared behind the young man instantly and put his hand warmly on his shoulder. Why did you stop contacting my former teammate in the Yangchun department after quitting the Wucheng Vice team? Pancheng's temples twitched, but he ignored Lan Mu. Where is the common man? Wait a minute, let Madoka recover from her injuries first. Her injuries are quite serious. Lan Yuan paused at the door and glared at Lan Mu and Pancheng who were following closely. Now, gentlemen, please do not enter. Take it off. Cheng Xue looked at the arrogant little lowly in front of her in surprise, and looked towards Lan Yuan behind her for help. Lan Yuan twitched the corner of her mouth unnaturally. She had very little contact with Cheng Xue, but she had witnessed so many things, so she shouldn't need to explain too much. It's okay. She's here to help you recover from your wounds. Cheng Xue's cheeks were slightly red, and she felt a little embarrassed to take off her clothes in front of strangers. She hesitated, and as the fair skin of her upper body was slowly exposed to the air, Lan Yuan turned around silently. It seems quite big. Xiaoyuan blinked and slowly placed her hand on Cheng Xue's wound. As the energy surged, along with a burst of intense itching, the blood holes between her chest and abdomen sprouted countless granules. The granules flew around, intertwined, and quickly closed back up. Cheng Xue bit her lip and turned her head to the side. This scene was really disgusting. Hearing a strange movement outside the door, Lan Yuan's eyes turned cold and he took out the butterfly knife in his hand. Chapter 40, Part 1. After Cheng Xue fully recovered from her injuries, Lan Yuan asked Cheng Xue to wait here for a while, then pulled out the butterfly knife on the door and walked to the living room. Lan Mu sat on the sofa with wandering eyes, pretending to be very busy. As we all know, when people are embarrassed, they will pretend to be busy. I don't know who is so thick-skinned. Even when the little girl is recovering from her injuries, she still sneaks around the door. Lan Yuan snorted coldly. It's him. Lan Mu waved his hand and pointed at Pan Cheng who was drinking tea quietly. Taro, who was eating snacks, glanced at the two of them in surprise. Puff. Panchen sprayed a mouthful of tea all over Lan Mu's head and face. Don't talk nonsense. You think everyone is the same as you. Oh, it's so disgusting. Lan Mu rushed into the bathroom to wash his face with a look of disgust, but in fact he hid in the bathroom for a long time and refused to come out. Pancheng put down the teacup expressionlessly. He was obviously a person with a gentle temper and a bit of a weak character, but every time he saw Lan Mu acting carelessly and looking like he didn't deserve a beating, he was furious. Phew, He must maintain his persona as light as a chrysanthemum and personable. Pan Sheng tried his best to smile and gestured politely to Taro Lanyuan. Taro opened his mouth and glanced at Pan Sheng, who walked into Cheng Shui's room with a strange smile on his face. Lanyuan, is he really reliable? I don't know either. Lanyuan told the truth. I hope so, otherwise Cheng Shui will be in big trouble when he goes back with his memories. Taro stuffed a potato chip into his mouth and said vaguely. 30 minutes later, the little Lolita staggered out of Feng Ye's room with a lollipop in her mouth and her short legs. At some unknown moment, Lan Mu, who ran out of the bathroom, had sneaked into Feng Ye's side and witnessed the entire treatment process. As he watched, he clapped his hands and cheered, causing Feng Ye to have a headache, because he was really curious about how to treat it. Looking at it now, it felt like a living dead with flesh and bones. Completely forgetting that he was so elusive, it was time to scare others with his sequence ability. Lan Yuan quickly picked up Xiao Yuan and put her on the sofa and took out the lollipop in her mouth. I want to report you for abusing child labor, Madoka muttered, but her upper and lower eyelids were constantly fighting. She had exhausted all her soul energy today. Soon, her long eyelashes trembled slightly, looking like she was sleeping soundly. Lan Yuan pulled out a blanket and put it on Madoka's body. Why hasn't Pan Sheng finished hypnosis yet? Sometimes when you meet people who are strong-willed and don't want to forget this memory, it will be more difficult to deprive them of it. Lan Mu shrugged. Inside the room, your name is Cheng Shui, right? Pan Sheng smiled, pulled out a chair, and sat next to Cheng Shui. Hello, my name is Pan Sheng. Who are you? Cheng Shui looked at the unfamiliar young man in a suit in front of him in confusion. It seems they haven't had time to introduce you yet. I am a psychiatrist. I heard that you saw scenes in the hotel that ordinary people have never seen. So the person in charge of the hotel specially asked me to come over and provide you with counseling. Oh, I'm sorry to bother you. Cheng Shui pursed her lips. It's such a sad experience. I heard that 3 of your classmates died in this sudden disaster. If it were me, I hope these things never happened. Pan Sheng regretted. Cheng Shui was silent. Next, please follow my instructions. These painful memories will soon be forgotten. Listening to Pan Sheng's calm tone, a warm palm placed on her forehead. Cheng Shui felt that her eyelids were getting heavier and heavier, and a soft white light flashed in front of her eyes. Pan Sheng frowned slightly. Cheng Shui's consciousness was fighting against him. However, in his clinic, he often encounters all kinds of strange things. Why are you shouting that you will never have anything to do with this heartless man? But before the memory deprivation starts, you are already crying and running out, shouting that you still don't want to forget him. Or a man who has been cuckolded several times loses his memory that day and is fascinated by the same person another day. He follows others to ask for their contact information. His ex-girlfriend seems to have seen a psycho, so the current situation is not too difficult. Don't worry. Soon, you will forget everything about these 2 days. Pan Sheng closed his eyes and comforted softly. He could feel that Cheng Shui's confrontational mood had gradually calmed down. But he didn't notice. The girl in front of her has opened her eyes, staring faintly at Pan Sheng, who is concentrating on depriving and tampering with this memory in front of her. She closed her eyes. I don't know how much time passed. Pan Sheng looked tiredly at the girl with her eyes closed in front of him, quietly moved his chair back, and stood at the door of the room again. There is no other way to do it. After all, he is a mature social person. Your name is Cheng Shui, right? He smiled, pulled out a chair, and sat next to Cheng Shui. Hello, my name is Pan Sheng. Who are you? Cheng Shui looked at the young man in suit in front of him in confusion. It seems they haven't had time to introduce you yet. I am a psychiatrist. I heard that when you were attending a birthday party of a classmate in another room accidentally knocked over a lit scented candle because of playfulness, causing a fire. Only one person escaped. Therefore, the person in charge of the hotel specially asked me to come over and provide you with guidance. What a sad experience. How are you doing now? If it's too uncomfortable, you can use medication to intervene, Pan Sheng said with concern. It's okay, doctor. Cheng Shui smiled slightly. That is their own fault. I personally think that it is difficult to respond to emergency fire situations without safety awareness and fire protection awareness. But I still feel sorry for their young lives. Pan Sheng remained expressionless and cursed in his heart. Are high school students now so tolerant? I think back then, his classmates' fractures scared him so much. Okay, classmate Cheng Shui, it seems that your condition has not been affected too much. If you have any worries in the future, you can contact me at any time. Pan Sheng took out a business card from his suit pocket in a gentlemanly manner and handed it to Cheng Shui. He let out a long sigh of relief as he left the room. Oh my god, the work is finally over. What took you so long? Lan Mu slowly poked his head out from behind Pan Sheng, almost frightening him out of his wits. I have to break your leg today. Pan Sheng roared. Anyway, with Xiao Yuan here, the broken leg can be repaired. His little heart was beating wildly because of Lan Mu's fright. What if he died suddenly of myocardial infarction? The hearts of workers like them are very fragile. I didn't expect you to be scared. Sai Rue. Pancheng became even more angry when he heard Lan Mu apologize with a slap on his face. Wuqing, Shiqiu District? Cheng Shui in the room looked at the information on the business card, smiled, and put it back in his pocket. What an interesting person. Chapter 41, Part 1. The next day, Wuqing Experimental Middle School, Monday morning. Lao Ban walked into the classroom with a heavy expression, and the noisy classmates in the class suddenly became quiet. Among them, the positions of Cheng Shui and Zhang Qiuza were rarely vacant. As top students in the class, the two of them rarely ask for leave once a year. Next, I want to announce a sad thing to everyone. Classmates Zhang Yida, Yang Ming, Gao Shan, Si Hu, and Yuan Yi from our class were killed at the same time. What happened? Why did my back suddenly feel cold? I suddenly remembered that these people all went to attend Zhang Qiuza's birthday. Fortunately, I am not familiar with him. The last time I heard something like this was on the news. I didn't expect it to be around me. Stop guessing. Let's see what Laoban says. The students in the class had different expressions and were whispering. Laoban took a deep breath, his voice trembling. On the afternoon of June 15th, Zhang Qiuza organized nearly 10 students from our class to go to a 5-star hotel in order to hold his birthday party. As a result, during the hide-and-seek game with the 5 classmates, he accidentally knocked over the scented candle, causing a fire. Fortunately, students in another room discovered the fire and called the fire department urgently. Otherwise, the consequences will be disastrous. The old man slapped the desk, his eyes slightly red. Although the students who died were usually unknown students in the upper reaches or even the middle reaches, in her heart, every student had their own character and their own shining points. Zhang Yida is honest, Yang Ming is quiet and reserved, and Gao Shan is the Chinese teacher's favorite study committee member. Si Hu and Yuan Yi are talkative, cheerful, and helpful, and get along well with the boys and girls in the class. Before we mourn the loss of 5 classmates, I hope everyone can take this incident as a warning, strengthen fire awareness, and stay away from the riverbank. Cherish life and love life. Fang Yi supported his head with his hands and stared expressionlessly at the swaying tree shadows outside the window. It seems that Zhou in the ferryman department handled the matter quite thoroughly. They not only deprived the memory, but also tampered with the facts. However, no matter what happened, Zhang Qiuza was a deserter. He did not dare to face himself, the dead people, or all the classmates in the class. Everything is the result of his own fault. The families of the 5 deceased classmates will hold a funeral together. After everyone returns at noon, they will change into black clothes and go to the funeral parlor. There is no need to attend class this afternoon. As soon as the old class finished speaking, Fang Yi keenly noticed that several boys looked at each other and made gestures under the desk. Apparently he planned to go through the motions in the afternoon and sneak to the internet cafe. This is also the reason why he hates humans. Fang Yi smiled sarcastically. Since the year he lost his sight, he understood it early at the age of 16. Indifference and selfishness, seeking advantages and avoiding disadvantages, are the essence of this world. Kindness is the mercy of the strong, while the weak are only weak. Otherwise, judging from the timing of Qiao's appearance at the scene that day, and the man's ability and acumen, Fang Yi guessed that he had already discovered clues before that. Zhou is very cautious. He is like a clever hunter, observing secretly and setting up a dragnet according to the situation. He will not be sure of victory until the last moment. He would never do it. Otherwise, after the 12 of them gathered in the hall, they could use strong methods to force Yuan Yi and Fat Hu out. Pay a little more to get it. But the price was unknown and full of risks, so Qiao chose another path. Fang Yi, do you have a black suit? If not, I'll give you Lan Mu's suit. Lan Yuan hesitated and sent a message to Fang Yi. No. After school ended early at noon, Fang Yi leaned at the campus gate and waited for Lan Yuan. Taro came up with a sinister look on his face. Oh, isn't this our brave and strong Fang Yi classmate from the hotel incident? Who are you waiting for here? Lan Yuan, I asked her to borrow a black suit. Fang Yi answered truthfully. Ah. Taro covered his mouth in an exaggerated manner. Don't look at Lan Mu like this. He has a misophobia. Can Lan Yuan lend you his clothes? I don't know that. Could it be that your comradeship secretly escalated into a relationship between a man and a woman behind our backs? Taro's eyes suddenly widened, and he started yelling at the school gate. I didn't expect that I would be stabbed in the back by my sisters one day. Fang Yi frowned and covered his mouth, saying, What on earth are you guessing about? Taro, if you keep talking nonsense, I'll break off all your lipstick. Lan Yuan, who appeared beside the two of them at some unknown time, said coldly. This behavior looked very much like her brother's. Let's go. Lan Yuan stopped a taxi. I might have to trouble you to go to my house. Fang Yi, who covered Taro's mouth, quickly got into the taxi and quickly closed the door. You, I haven't even been to Lan Yuan's house yet. Lan Yuan, you really betrayed me. We are no longer good sisters. You abandoned me for a man. You. Classmate, do you want to drive? The driver glanced at Taro, whose face was severely deformed and grinning against the window, and was a little scared. Let's go. Lan Yuan ordered. It wasn't until Taro could no longer be seen in the rearview mirror that Lan Yuan leaned back on his seat and let out a long sigh of relief. Nothing else. The main thing is that it's too embarrassing. Doesn't this matter to her? Fang Yi raised his eyebrows. It's okay. She just loves to talk. But I heard from Taro that Lan Mu has mysophobia, so it wouldn't be a good idea for you to lend me his clothes, right? It's okay. I'll give it to you if I can. Lan Yuan looked at the passing scenery outside the window with some absent-mindedness, until Fang Yi stood at the foot of a large flat-floor community with a lake view, twitching the corner of his mouth. Are you also rich? Then Xiao is richer. Lan Yuan paused. Since you're here, let's go up and have a seat. My brother is not at home. Fang Yi looked a little unnatural as he listened to the familiar lines from countless TV series. Oh. Tick. Lan Yuan pressed his finger on the door lock and handed Fang Yi a pair of slippers after entering the house. Well, there are very few people coming to the house, so you just have to make do with Lan Mu's slippers. I don't mind it. Fang Yi put on his slippers. The size was just right. Lan Mu's body shape is indeed similar to his, but he is relatively thinner. The decoration of Lan Mu's home is modern and simple. The floor-to-ceiling windows in the living room are large and bright, and the colors are mainly black, white, and gray. However, it was unexpectedly neat. Fang Yi estimated that with their financial resources, they would often ask their aunt to come over and clean it. Lan Mu's room was tightly closed, but just from the two-dimensional poster of a black swordsman holding two swords posted on the door of his room, he knew who this person was. Before Fang Yi could look towards Lan Yuan's room, a fragrant wind passed by his nose, and his body fell backward uncontrollably. Lan Yuan, what are you doing? Chapter 42, Part 1. Fang Yi frowned and looked at the person on his body. The girl's soft black long hair was scattered. From Fang Ye's angle, only her slender waist could be seen. He couldn't see Lan Yuan's expression clearly. He could only feel the amazing heat radiating from her body. His Adam's apple rolled, and even he didn't notice that his voice was slightly hoarse at the moment. Hello. Fang Yi. What? Can I trust you? Fang Ye's eyes narrowed. What the hell are you talking about? What happened? Answer me. Lan Yuan raised his head. Looking at her eyes, Fang Zi was shocked. The emotions in those phoenix eyes were a little too complicated at the moment. He had never seen Lan Yuan like this. Okay. Fang Yi said. Really? Lan Yuan's expression was unpredictable. She stared at the young man's face. It seemed like it was the first time that she looked at Fang Ye's face so carefully. With sharp eyebrows, delicate facial features, and fair complexion, he is actually a handsome guy of another style. It's a pity that Lan Yuan doesn't have the heart to appreciate it now. She reached out and took off the black contact lens on one side of him. Everything happened so suddenly, but it was so natural, as if it was an action Lan Yuan had rehearsed countless times. Fang Ye's heart, which had been beating faster than usual, suddenly stopped at this moment. He hasn't even reacted yet. He just looked at Lan Yuan blankly. All he could think about now was that he was discovered without being prepared. Don't rush, don't rush, don't rush. There is still room for everything. Just being discovered with the eye of calamity isn't a big deal. When the bloody cross pupil of Fang Ye's left eye appeared in front of Lan Yuan's eyes, she was stunned, but not too surprised, as if she was verifying a long-guessed fact. Lan Yuan stood up. His expression returned to coldness, but compared to usual, it looked more like a volcano with the top of the mountain covered by ice and snow. The remaining warmth between the two gradually cooled down. When did you find out? Fang Yi propped up the sofa and slowly sat upright. Seeing that Lan Yuan didn't respond for a long time, he spoke slowly. In other words, except for you. Does anyone else in the Wuching team know? What? You want to kill me and silence me? Lan Yuan laughed mockingly, his voice trembling slightly. Tick. It's the sound of the door lock. Lan Mu is back. Their expressions changed. Hey, why are my slippers missing? Lan Mu's eyes widened as soon as he entered the entrance. Fang Yi stood in Lan Yuan's room, his eyes dark. He stared at Lan Yuan, who was leaning against the door with his back and a hint of unnoticeable nervousness on his face, but he couldn't figure it out in his heart. It seems that Lan Yuan didn't tell anyone else. If it's something that even Lan Mu doesn't know about, then others must not know about it. But why did she help him hide it? How did she know? Dong dong dong. Lan Mu stood outside the room and knocked on the door. This damn girl locked the door again. She must have been sleepwalking at night and took my slippers away. Lan Yuan closed his eyes and finally understood Panching briefly, wishing he could open the door immediately and tear Lan Mu's mouth apart. When did she sleepwalk? Hey, oops, I'm changing clothes. What? You said there is an elective physical education class in the afternoon? Just kill me. I know, I know, come downstairs right away. Lan Mu's voice as he answered the phone echoed in the living room. As the door closed and footsteps sounded, Lan Yuan slowly sat on the floor of the bedroom, leaning against the door. Fang Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. Why? Lan Yuan sat on the edge of her retro bed covered with black sheets, looking at Fang Ye's strange eyes that looked like strange pupils, and her heart trembled. No reason. I want to know your reasons. I believe. You must also have your own secrets. Huh. Fang Yi breathed out. Do you know what my eyes mean? I know that Pandora's first seat is most famous for her eyes. But I don't understand why you don't tell everyone. Do you know how important it is to the ferryman to have the ability to travel through the dark world? I don't want to know. Fang Yi interrupted Lan Yuan with a cold face. I don't want to listen to these high-sounding principles, and I don't want to go to the so-called dark world. Do you know what it is like there? Who would do it for me? Responsible for his life? Did anyone come to save me when I was blind? No, there was only countless cynicism, and the burden that crushed my family and my mother. Now, because of my eyes, I have to risk my life to save everyone. I'm not a savior, nor am I a bad person. I just want to use my own ability to protect the people around me, and protect the people who still reach out to me when I am at a low point. As for the others, their death has nothing to do with me. Lan Yuan's mouth opened wide. It was the first time she heard Fang Yi say these words. In her eyes, although the previous Fang Yi had a lukewarm personality, he was always gentle. He went to fight Zhong Zhanyi for a few unknown female students. On the viaduct that night, he also stood in front of her and Lan Mu. He has been silently undertaking the mission of the ferryman and has been contributing to the team in his own way. Since Fang Yi joined the Wuching home team, everyone's sadness over Li Lu's death has been diluted. It wasn't until Yuan Yi was alone with her in the hotel that he revealed his identity as Yi and mentioned some of Fang Ye's actions. Although he was overtly and secretly belittling Fang Yi at that time, Lan Yuan still remembered it in his mind. Because Yuan Yi said at the beginning that he was very good at observation. He said that Fang Yi actually liked wearing contact lenses and was really a sissy. This was an ordinary thing, but Lan Yuan used cause and effect, and saw that the endpoint of Yuan Yi's causal line was a pair of blood-crossed eyes. After Yuan Yi's death, she was shocked to realize that the disaster contractor was lurking among those at the birthday party. Combining the two, she inevitably thought of Fang Yi. Until she just took off Fang Ye's contact lenses and confirmed her judgment, she was still hinting to herself that Fang Yi must have his own difficulties. But she still didn't understand why Fang Yi didn't tell everyone his true identity, and she didn't understand why the disaster contractor actually had sequence abilities. Everything was like a huge gray mystery shrouding her mind. Until now, she suddenly felt that she didn't understand the young man standing in front of her at all. It can't be said that I don't understand it. It can be called a stranger. She now even suspected that Fang Yi had a dual personality, because his thoughts and words, compared to his previous actions, didn't look like the same person. It was as if there was another personality existing in his body. You're right, my previous thoughts were too selfish. Lan Yuan's eyes were slightly red. Fang Yi looked at her expression at this moment and silently put on the contact lenses. But I can assure you that I will never do anything detrimental to you and Lan Mu. I hope so. Lan Yuan said no more. She put her hand on the door handle of the room and said, Before you want to identify yourself, I will not tell anyone what happened today. Thank you. Fang Yi thanked him sincerely. This was the only result he could accept. Lan Yuan opened the door. Then he saw Lan Mu standing in front of the bedroom door with a cold look on his face. Chapter 43, Part 1. Brother? Why are you here? Lan Yuan's face turned pale suddenly. Lan Mu didn't leave? Did he hear the conversation between himself and Fang Yi? How much did he hear? Get out of the way. Lan Mu pushed Lan Yuan away coldly, raised his arm and punched him. Fang Yi suddenly felt a burning pain on his face. Hiss. Fang Yi touched the corner of his cracked mouth and took a breath, but Lan Mu didn't save any energy. It's just that. The meaning of this punch seems a bit complicated at the moment. He frowned and looked at the angry Lan Mu standing in front of him. No matter what the situation was, anyone who was punched so inexplicably would be a little angry. Lan Mu grabbed Fang Ye's collar and gritted his teeth. Let me tell you, why is there a pair of men's shoes at the door? It turns out to be your boy. Fortunately, I have superb acting skills and pretended to leave, otherwise I wouldn't be able to catch you. You actually dare to break into the house while I'm away and plot against my sister. I'm going to beat you to death today. Turns out I didn't hear it. Lan Yuan secretly glanced at Fang Yi, who was expressionless, and immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Brother, you misunderstood. What did I misunderstand? Lan Mu let go of Fang Ye's collar and turned to glare at Lan Yuan with a look of pain on his face. You are only a high school student. How can you fall in love prematurely? What about puppy love? I just borrowed a suit from Fang Yi. Lan Yuan also frowned. Fang Yi, please go first. For this punch, I will say sorry to you on behalf of Lan Mu. Fang Yi was stunned for a moment, then asked, Don't you need me to explain it together? The latter gave him a reassuring look. Seeing that the two of them dared to flirt with each other in front of him, Lan Mu's face turned blue and his fists clenched loudly. Don't leave. Fang Yi paused, but still left without looking back. This guy really thinks of himself as his sister-stealing enemy. Seeing Lan Mu's unreasonable look, Lan Yuan was also a little angry. After hearing what she said, she didn't think Fang Yi, the ferryman, would let anyone rub him into a ball. If there was a fight, things would get messy. Big. 况且，就算是兰木说的是真的，他的反应未免也太大了。难不成自己以后谈恋爱，对方都要被他揍一拳吗？ Hey, didn't I say you're not allowed to leave? Lan Mu. Lan Yuan's expression turned cold. Even if I fall in love, what does it have to do with you? It's better to take care of yourself before taking care of me. What? Although Lan Mu was speechless on the surface, alarm bells were ringing in his heart. My sister actually said such things to a man she had known for less than a month. It would be okay after a while. As the brother and sister grew up, every time they quarreled, he never won one. He didn't think that Fang Yi, a gloomy boy, could be his brother-in-law. There are so many bad men. When he's not hanging out at nightclubs, he's drinking and picking up girls. He also pretends to be innocent and deceives little girls. From this identification, he felt that his sister was definitely a love brain. Absolutely. It is very possible that he was deceived by Fang Yi. Bewitched. Don't you know I have misophobia? After confirming that Fang Yi had left, Lan Mu took a deep breath and softened his tone a lot. That's not the reason for you to hit others. Lan Yuan's tone was stiff. Besides, you don't even listen to my explanation. Seeing Lan Yuan twisting his head and not wanting to talk to him anymore, Lan Mu felt a chill in his heart. He felt that he had nowhere to vent his grievances and anger, but he couldn't explain why, because he was the one who hit Fang Yi first. Lan Mu's style is, if you can't figure it out, then don't think about it. Whatever you want. Bang. Listening to the sound of Lan Mu slamming the door and leaving, Lan Yuan lay down on the sofa in the living room with a tired look. His hair was messy and his collarbone was slender. She only felt as if all her strength had been drained from her body, and even her brain was feeling swelling and pain. Originally, after confirming the news that Fang Yi was a disaster contractor, she was already overloaded, and then Lan Mu came again. If her mood is usually rowing, so today was like a roller coaster ride. Monday afternoon, number 135, Shichio District, Wucheng. Why are you here? Pancheng flipped through the books in his hand and pushed up his glasses. He didn't even take a second look at the handsome young man sitting opposite him, who came uninvited. Lan Mu smiled and said, Aren't you here to inspect how your work is going? Pancheng sneered without raising his head. Since when do you still have such a leisurely life? Apart from work at Four Seasons, you are either eating, drinking, and clubbing with those gangsters every day, or you are riding your shabby motorcycle around to hook up with little girls. F***ku. Lan Mu stood up suddenly, then sat back in his chair dejectedly. What you said may be right. I am indeed an incompetent brother. Oh, Pancheng exclaimed, as if he had heard something surprising, and couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth. However, it's true that the brother and sister haven't quarreled for a long time. I don't know what the reason is this time. You're gloating about your misfortune. Lan Mu spoke softly. If you laugh again, I will destroy your clinic. Pancheng immediately withdrew his smile. He believed that the person in front of him could really do such a thing. He coughed twice. Ahem. Tell me, what happened to your sister? Lan Mu's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he grabbed Pancheng's shoulders excitedly. Yes, I almost forgot that you were a psychiatrist. Come on, help me analyze it. 501 hours, no counteroffer. Pancheng took off his gold-rimmed glasses, his face expressionless, but Lan Mu's next words made him choke. So cheap? Lan Mu waved his hand proudly. Then from now until the time when you get off work, I'll cover it all. Looking at Lan Mu, who looked expectant in front of him, Pancheng weakly rubbed his sore eyebrows. Damn it, he had forgotten that this kid was the second generation of rich people. These evil rich people. Can you change it with him? He wants to enjoy it even if it's just for one day. 5 hours later, Pancheng's mouth was dry, so he picked up the teacup at hand and glanced at the sun that was about to set outside the window, with a look of despair on his face. This man not only refused to listen to advice as always, but also subconsciously ignored the words he didn't want to hear. He had to say a sentence 800 times before he understood it. Why did you become deaf at such a young age? Pancheng was exhausted, so he simply followed Lan Mu's advice later. He felt comfortable listening to him and let him go. I understand what you want to express. Lan Mu rubbed the non-existent stubble on his chin. Pancheng has heard this sentence almost 10 times. What you mean is that I usually indulge Lan Yuan too much. Only by neglecting her for a few days will she realize the importance of my brother, right? Pancheng raised his head helplessly and glanced at the ticking clock on the wall. Why wasn't it time to get off work yet? Indeed, there is no sister who disobeys her brother. Besides, I am doing it for her own good. Who wants their sister to be taken away by a yellow-haired boy? At least, it can't be Fong Yi. Lan Mu clenched his fist angrily. Why? Although Fong Yi is a good guy, and I admire him very much, he is not good as a brother-in-law. Pan Sheng took out his ears and cursed in his heart. I think he is at least much smarter than you. I think men who are too thin don't feel secure enough. Lan Mu said righteously. You're right. Pan Sheng's eyes lit up and he sat up straight. But it's already my end time. I'll turn right when I go out. Goodbye. So fast? Lan Mu was stunned. Can't you work overtime? I'll give you more money. Roll. Double. Transfer money immediately? Chicken pay treasure arrived. 5,000 yuan. Chapter 44, Part 1. Since many incidents occurred at the Crown Hotel, Qiao's villa has become the temporary base of the Wuqing team. The atmosphere in the villa is extremely solemn now, nothing else. But the two brothers Lan Mu and Lan Yuan actually had an unprecedented quarrel. Lan Mu crossed his arms and crossed his chest, sitting on the sofa with his head facing out of the window. He had been there for almost half an hour. Lan Yuan wore a black dress that made her skin white. She sat on the right with an expressionless face, typing on the screen with her fingers deftly. Didn't I say that? I think Lan Mu is about to suffer from cervical spondylosis. Aren't you two going to talk? Taro whispered in Lan Yuan's ear. It's true that these two brothers and sisters have to stay in the same room even if they have a quarrel and a cold war. Make yourself unhappy. It's up to him. Lan Yuan didn't even raise his head. Lan Mu snorted coldly when he heard this. After having a long conversation with the psychiatrist Pan Sheng last night, he was no longer Wu Xiang. This time, he will never give up easily. Xiao, who rarely had time to stay in the villa, came out to make coffee. Seeing this scene, he shook his head. Little brat. Who are you talking about? Lan Mu glared, and finally he found a chance to turn his head. It had been like this for a long time, and no one cared about his extremely sore neck. Sure enough, the world is in a cold state and people's hearts are cold and warm. It is impossible to count on that stupid Taro. Xiao curled his lips and went straight to the second floor. The picture in front of him made his eyebrows jump again. What happened to their team in the past 2 days? This is too much. Fong Yi was sitting in the living room on the second floor. After repeatedly confirming the balance of 150,000 in Jifu Bao, he held his mobile phone with a serious expression and confirmed repeatedly. Didn't Joe say the bonus was 50,000? Could it be that his hands were shaking and he was wrong? Joe must have his reasons for doing this. Xiaofeng, what are you doing? Xiao coughed. Nothing. Fong Yi looked alert and quickly stuffed his phone back into his trouser pocket. Xiao twitched his lips when he saw this. He had already seen it. Did he look like someone who would steal the team members' bonuses? Ahem. I heard from Taro that the reason why the two brothers and sisters quarreled was because they were jealous of you? How is that possible? Fong Yi looked strange. What kind of drama was Taro thinking? Joe picked up the coffee cup and leaned it aside with an elegant posture. But there are some things. As Lan Yuan's brother, it's natural for Lan Mu to be emotional. As the saying goes, an elder brother is like a father. After all, their parents have been gone for a long time. Not there? Fong Ye's eyes narrowed slightly. Is this what he understood? Before he could respond, Qiao said to himself, one of their parents was an Ai. Before the two children found out, the father killed their mother who was an Ai. Of course, when they were very young. At that time, Lan Yuan Lan Mu had no concept of Yi and sequencers. He only knew that his young self watched his father kill his mother. What? Fong Yi was shocked and confused. Can Yi combine with humans? Xiao seemed to see Fong Ye's doubts. Air is divided into 7 categories, namely ghost, epidemic, charm, dream, giant, poison, and death. You have seen several of them, but there are 2 Yi, unlike other categories, lurks in human society. Presumably, you have also seen what happens after the death of Yi. They will turn into a pool of sticky ink-colored liquid, which is also a characteristic of the dark world. The giant Yi seems to particularly hate the human body, and they will more often choose to blend with inanimate objects. They have difficulty communicating, rely on instinct to act, are bloodthirsty and violent, and will kill all life forms sensed in the surrounding area. Generally speaking, before the giant evil appears, the surrounding area has become a dead zone, so relatively speaking also easy to spot. So far, we in Wuqing have only eliminated 1 case. At that time, the home team next door also came to Wuqing to help, but even so, 3 ferrymen were lost. Why? That air is of a high level? No, we have not classified the giant evils into different levels, because every time one appears, it will be accompanied by countless casualties. Is it strong without a reason? Fong Ye's eyes narrowed. Then? Because it is integrated with the whole building. Joe touched his pocket, but it was empty. It must have been Ah Huan who took the cigarette away for him again. Fong Yi frowned deeply. Can't we just blow up that building? I also wish things were so simple. Xiao sighed. It has a gadget similar to the main body hidden inside. If it cannot kill the main body before it is integrated with the building, it will regenerate infinitely. In this case, you eliminated it because the giant E at that time was not fully integrated yet? No. Xiao smiled. Because Fang Qingtian is here. In the face of absolute power, all skills are in vain. Fang Qingtian? Fang Yi silently wrote down the name. The other type is the ghost type heir. Although the combat power and aggressiveness of this type of heir are much smaller than the other 6 types of heir, it can almost be said to be negligible, but it has the most disgusting characteristics. They can directly devour humans and inherit the host's body and all memories, similar to parasitism. You should understand what I mean. You don't know when the person you get along with day and night will no longer be the same person, and the same is true for Lan Yuan and Lan Mu's mother. How could there be such a misfortune? Fang Ye's eyes were heavy, and he had to admit that he took it for granted. He couldn't imagine how he would react if his mother was parasitized by this kind of evil. He also couldn't imagine how devastated Lan Yuan Lan Mu would be when he grew up and found out. That kind of evil loves to play with people's hearts. It will twist, change, and tear apart all your memories of that person step by step until the day you discover it. The other 6 types of emergency all feed on the flesh and blood of sequencers, and it feeds on despair and collapsed emotions. As for how to find the emergency of the ghost type, it is very simple. They don't bleed. Looking at Xiao's expression at this moment, Fang Yi was keenly aware of the heavy sadness filling the air at this moment. Even if Xiao didn't say it, it would be enough to enlighten people. You have any relatives who have been parasitized? Yes, she is my wife. Fang Yi was silent. Xiao put down the finished coffee in his hand and smiled. So, I will kill all the heirs and close all the prison doors. In this regard, Lan Mu is very similar to me. He came over and patted Fang Yi on the shoulder. Come on, whether it's making money or something else, you will always find what you want to pursue in the 4 seasons. Looking at Xiao's lonely back, Fang Yi lowered his eyes, but his expression did not change. Chapter 45, Part 1. Are you leaving now? We ordered hot pot takeout. Why don't you stay and eat together? Taro raised his head and saw Fang Yi in a black suit. Well, you guys can eat. I'm going home first. Fang Yi stepped into his sneakers. He really couldn't get used to wearing leather shoes. Okay, I also said it's more lively when there are more people. Taro stretched. Hey. Lan Mu clicked his tongue coldly and said in a stiff tone, it's not easy to take a taxi here. I'll take you to the city by bike. Oh. Fang Yi obviously didn't expect Lan Mu to show up suddenly. After all, in Lan Mu's eyes, he was his sister-stealing enemy. After the 2 of them left the villa, Taro tore open a bag of human cat strips with a confused expression on his face. What? Your brother is such a ruthless person. No, it's just that his neck is so sore that he can't stand it anymore. But he can't save face and leave, because he feels that if he leaves first, he is admitting defeat. Lan Yuan analyzed calmly and expressionlessly. Taro opened his mouth. How do you know so detailedly? Did Lan Mu secretly send you a message to surrender? No. Lan Yuan denied again. He has been doing this since he was a child, and before that, he must have harassed Pancheng again one night. I don't believe it. Taro took out his cell phone suspiciously and dialed Pancheng's number. Taro? What's wrong? Pancheng's voice was a little tired. I want to ask you something. Are you in the clinic now? Taro's eyes were sly. Yes, what's wrong? Oh, Lan Mu just said that he was going to Shirchio district to find you. He is in the bathroom now, so I just called you to confirm, lest he miss the point. Hold on. Following the sound of keys colliding and the lock cylinder turning, Pancheng's voice sounded again. Please tell him that I'm not here. Okay, I'll tell him not to leave soon. Thank you for your hard work. Bye. Taro hung up the phone and looked at each other with Lan Yuan for a while. Only then did Taro's earth-shattering laughter erupt in the villa. Lan Mu, who had just rolled out the motorcycle from the garage, rubbed his neck and his face darkened when he heard the faint laughter in the villa. What's going on? If he walks on the front foot, the 2 of them will be happy on the back foot, right? My feelings are there, so I can't laugh. Sure enough, at this moment, no matter how fair and selfless a person is, he will only turn to his best friend. Fortunately, he also has a brother. After sending Fang Yi off today, let's turn around and find Pancheng. This guy stays at the clinic all day long, so he shouldn't miss out. The 2 sat on Lan Mu's red motorcycle and roared away. Do you really like my sister? Lan Mu said muffledly while wearing a helmet. What are you talking about? I can't hear you. Fang Yi asked loudly, his black hair dancing wildly in the wind. Lan Mu glanced at Fang Yi, who looked confused in the rearview mirror, and was speechless for a moment. Logically speaking, the 5 senses of a sequencer would be about twice as sensitive as ordinary people. Is this kid really unable to hear, or is he pretending not to be able to hear? Get off the car, you can take a taxi here. Lan Mu snorted coldly. Thank you. Fang Yi smiled, turned around and got on a bus. Lan Mu was dumbfounded. Didn't he and Lan Yuan give all their bonuses to Fang Yi? Why couldn't he even take a taxi? On the way home, Fang Yi clicked on the account balance again and was overjoyed when he looked at the numbers inside. Now, there was only 50,000 left before he could pay back the money Cheng Shui and Haiten gave him. However, why did Cheng Shui take leave today? Is there any sequelae of memory deprivation, dizziness, nausea, or something? Fang Yi thought for a while, then edited a message and sent it to Cheng Shui. The content is, "How are you doing now?" Ever since Cheng Shui gave him Haiten's contact information, he has not added friends yet. Because Fang Yi felt that after all, it had been so many years since they had seen each other, and he would always feel a little uncomfortable if he didn't pay back the money they gave him. As the saying goes, brothers settle scores. Looking at the gradually darkening sky outside the bus window and the rows of gradually lighting up city night scenes, Fang Yi decided to call his mother first. Maybe he's a little hungry now, or maybe he wants to go home quickly. Do. Several busy signals sounded in the receiver. What? Didn't you go out without your mobile phone? Fang Yi murmured and dialed again in disbelief. Sorry, no one is answering the number you are calling now. Please wait. Fang Yi suddenly became a little restless. It's okay. My mother must have forgotten her mobile phone. She is very forgetful and often forgets this and that. Fang Yi comforted himself and subconsciously shook his legs. The old man sitting in front of him couldn't bear it. Today's young people are shaking their legs like stepping on sewing machines. His old bones are about to be broken apart. The old man turned his head and glared at Fang Yi. As for Fang Yi being stared at all the way, he didn't even notice until he got out of the car. The closer he got to his house, the faster his pace unconsciously accelerated. With Fang Ye's current vision, he soon saw thick smoke billowing in front of him and flames reaching into the sky. Even from a distance, Fang Yi could still smell the unpleasant smell that penetrated his nose and throat and the noisy cries of people. Fang Ye's speed was now abnormally fast. His heart was beating very fast, and even his hands and feet began to feel numb and weak, because it was the building where his home was located that caught fire. Moreover, the fire spread from his house. The raging fire in front of him dyed the night red, roaring like the flaming mouth of the god of hell, mocking his incompetence, as if to remind him how ridiculous the fact that he was a scorching sequencer was. The world in front of Fang Yi suddenly became black and white. Even the crackling sound of burning and such a noisy noise fell silent in his ears. It's a fire, it's a fire. Evacuate the people upstairs quickly. Why are you standing there? Call the fire department. An ant screamed. Fang Yi looked slowly and saw that she was the ant who loved playing mahjong in the community. Isn't this Xiao Fangya? Fortunately, you are not at home. The fire seems to have come from your house. The uncle's voice was like a bell. Well, that's the fishmonger at the nearby market. My mother loves to cook fish, so she's very familiar with him. Fang Ye's figure was swaying, and he was in despair. What are you kid doing? Didn't you see such a big fire? Why are you rushing in? Fang Yi, who rushed straight to the corridor, was pulled back by the fish-killing uncle with sharp eyes and quick hands. I'm going to save my mother. Fang Yi broke away from his uncle's hand. At this point, the probability of mother being at home is as high as 90%. However, the current fire should not have spread to the bathroom yet. Based on my mother's approach, she will definitely hide in the bathroom. Everything is still in time. The arsonist was caught. Over here. Isn't this Uncle Fang Yi? How could he do such a thing? Fang Yi turned around suddenly. Chapter 46, Part 1. His dark eyes were filled with twisted, almost substantive murderous intent, which made the fishmonger next to him shudder. Mother Fang's child seems a little different from his father. Soon, Li Weigua, who had a bruised nose and swollen face, was pushed aside by a bunch of elders and aunties in the neighborhood committee. No, I didn't set the fire. Do you think I'm crazy? Come and burn my own house. Li Weigua said stubbornly. Do you think there is no surveillance in the old community? I have already gone to call it out, otherwise I would really let you tell lies with your eyes open. One of the ants rushed forward angrily and kicked Li Weigua. Her home is just next door. Yejia upstairs. Fortunately, she was taking care of her grandson downstairs, and her husband was playing mahjong. Otherwise they would have been burned alive inside. None of my business. Fang Yi walked up to Li Weigua expressionlessly and grabbed his hair. As Li Weigua let out a shrill scream, his right kneecap was crushed by Fang Ye's kick. You'd better kneel here and pray that my mother is okay. This ruthless method shocked the elders and aunties at the scene. It wasn't until Fang Ye's back was swallowed up by the thick smoke in the corridor that they began to discuss it. No, why didn't anyone stop the kid just now, and you just watched him die? I didn't react right away. Didn't you stop him too? Why haven't the fire brigade arrived yet? Old Lu 2 scored 10,086. The scorching hot air waves came towards him like a mountain. Before entering the fire scene, Fang Yi took off his contact lenses. His blood-crossed eyes were like a blazing furnace, reflecting the blazing flames in front of him. By the time the fire brigade arrived, the building was likely to have been burned to rubble. But he didn't have a fire mask. Even if he could resist the flames, Fang's mother couldn't. A crazy idea suddenly arose in Fangji's mind. There are actually some subtle differences between the sequence ability that he can feel real flames and scorching heat. The material created by the sequencer's ability is more like an energy body, so even if Fang Ye's hand lights up with flames, it is his own energy and will not burn himself. But the fact is that he cannot control the current flames at the scene through the scorching heat he has mastered. Fang Ye has never hoped that he is a sequencer with the ability to control water. At the moment, he was not allowed to think too much. But if you convert all the flames into your own energy, can the fire be extinguished? Fang Ye slowly put away the scorching energy floating outside him to resist the fire. The fiery tongue of fire licked the skin instantly. Not only was the sweat instantly evaporated by the high temperature, but even his clothes were turned into pieces of scorched brown, and the dark lines of thorns on his back had unknowingly covered his whole body. Fang Ye's skin was red, and his expression was painful. He walked quickly through the fire, feeling as if he was being burned. The flames that did not belong to him roared like wild beasts, trying to tear his body apart. Fang Ye looked at the couplets and the Chinese character, Fu, that had long since turned into ashes at the door of his home. He raised his foot and kicked open the old-fashioned security door that was vulnerable to attack. Mom! After entering the living room where the fire was most intense, the old certificates had already been scorched brown on the wall, and the only remaining trophy in the bookcase had been half melted. The energy he tried to transform into flames was like a mud cow pouring into the sea, unable to cause any resonance or harmony. Why? He is not willing to give in. Even if I am a scorching sequencer, can I absorb and control these flames? Fang Ye roared, it is really a useless sequence. No matter what, we must take Mom out of here first. Judging from the special abilities of the divine contractors, they can completely escape in the air. Now that the matter has come to this, he can no longer care too much. Not here. Fang Ye looked blankly as he looked at the empty bathroom, which was the only place not engulfed by flames. It must be these flames. They are too annoying. Circles of strange black runes spread out from his body. This time, the raging orange flames turned into a grayish-white color in his eyes. Fang Ye seemed to be crying and laughing, and looked like a madman. He felt the energy of these flames. As the black runes around him spread and rotated, the dark thorn patterns all over Fang Ye's body twisted like living creatures in the twisted air. He pressed his palms to the floor. This time, he saw the grinning mouth in his palm. Fang Ye's face suddenly became extremely calm. He softly uttered 2 words. Plunder. In an instant, a shock wave containing a terrifying aura spread out in this old community with Fang Ye as the center, setting off a strong wind and sweeping away everything in the surrounding area. Hello, this is your Heady Lao takeout. The courier in a blue shirt rang the doorbell outside the villa. Okay. Taro cheered. I'm going to starve to death. Called Xiao and Ah Huan down quickly. Xiao said he couldn't get used to hot pot, and Ah Huan said he just started playing games. Lan Yuan scrolled through her phone expressionlessly until she came across a burning residential building on Douyin, and her face showed a look of distress. A look of confidence. Isn't this Fang Yejia? How could it suddenly catch fire? She silently estimated the time for Fang Yi to arrive home. Frowning, Fang Yi should have arrived at the scene by now. Taro, I'm going out. Lan Yuan grabbed some items and stuffed them into his bag, then rushed out the door. Ah! Taro stood in the courtyard, staring blankly at Lan Yuan who passed by him, and then shouted with great grief and anger, Sorry, I was still saying that more people are more lively, but in the blink of an eye you all abandoned me. Why did Lan Yuan go out in a hurry? Ah Huan stood on the stairs, pulling on his slippers, holding his mobile phone horizontally, and various familiar kill reports came from the mobile phone from time to time. Taro glared at Ah Huan angrily. Have fun. Be careful if you fall to death. Come over here and eat hot pot. In a moment, I will knock down this Highland Tower. Ah Huan, I'm not telling you. You look like you have kidney deficiency all day long. You're young. Be careful that you won't be able to find a partner by then. Taro picked up a chopstick of enoki mushrooms. It's all true. Women will only affect the speed at which I can open the game. Taro was speechless. Lan Yuan sat in the taxi, his eyebrows a little anxious. She decided that after this incident, she would put the matter of getting a driver's license and buying a car on the agenda. She clicked on the personal account that posted the fire video, but except for this video, the others were all selfies taken by 50-year-old men, and there was no news about the follow-up. She closed her phone and took a deep breath silently. Hopefully things don't get too bad before she gets there. Chapter 47, Part 1. It's over. It's even harder to put out the fire that started the fire. Where is the fire brigade? Come on, come on. That old man Lu was slurring his words and stammering. It took him a long time to tell the firefighters where we were. A strong gust of wind caused the adults and aunts gathered around downstairs to stagger around, and even many pieces of clothes hanging on the clothesline were blown off. They watched the fire getting fiercer and fiercer, and kept sighing. They felt that Fang Yi had been burned to death inside. Today's young people are really too impulsive. Evacuate the crowd, several firefighters shouted, holding high-pressure water cannons. The moment the water column spurts out, those firelights rising into the sky and dyeing the night red seemed to be pressed into a still picture. I saw the fires rushing back into the building as if they were alive. When everyone came to their senses, only a dark building with burn marks was left. The remaining smoke flows from above and slowly dissipates in midair. What's going on? The firefighter froze on the spot. The uncles and aunties rubbed their presbyopic eyes in disbelief. What did they see just now? These days, can the fire go out on its own? Hey, someone pinch me to see if I'm dreaming. The fish-killing uncle muttered to himself. I don't know which aunt took advantage of the chaos to slap him. The uncle screamed in pain. Grandma, who struck with such force? Fang's mother, who was riding a small electric donkey out to buy condiments, just entered the community and saw the light of the fire and the sound of the fire truck's whistle, and her face suddenly turned pale. I just took a long detour because I found out that I was short of seasonings when I was cooking, and the small supermarket near my home didn't sell them. Why did the fire start? It was still the location of my home. She clearly remembered that she had carefully checked the kitchen appliances before going out. After Fang Ma stumbled into the crowd, she saw Li Weiguo kneeling in the middle with a malicious look on his face and a happy look on his face. Why are you here? What's happening here? Here? Oh my God, what a blessing. You weren't at home. The sharp-eyed aunt who loved playing mahjong immediately saw Fang's mother squeezing into the crowd. Look at what good things your brother has done. Fang Ma's lips trembled, and she had already made a rough guess. Did you do it? The big beads of sweat on Li Weiguo's face kept flowing down because of the pain in his knees. He snorted and said nothing. Fang Ma, please leave him alone. Your son thought you were at home, so he rushed in. The fishmonger uncle who was familiar with Fang Ma looked anxious. Fang Ma's vision went dark. She pushed herself up and ran towards the corridor. Quick, stop her. This family member, we still don't know what the situation is. Our people will go in to rescue the remaining survivors now. A tall firefighter frowned and directed the scene in an orderly manner. Mother Fang cried and grabbed the firefighter's arm. Please, we must save my son. Rest assured. After getting a firm reply from the firefighter, Fang's mother walked up to Li Weiguo, raised her hand and slapped him. Why would you do such a thing? Her face turned red. She looked at this face that was somewhat similar to hers with hatred and asked in a trembling voice. Because you sold the house without my consent. Do you think I don't know if you prevaricate me every day? Since I can't get anything, then everyone will have a hard time. Li Weiguo's face was hideous with veins popping out on his neck. I'm going to kill you. Fang's mother screamed, grabbing Li Weiguo's neck with both hands. I want you to pay for my son's life. Mom Fang, don't be impulsive. It's not worth losing yourself for this person. Yes, the sentences for intentional arson and intentional murder are very severe. Let him be punished by law. As Li Weiguo's face turned purple and his eyes popped out, he laughed and said, kill me if you can. Anyway, you two, mother and son, are with me. That little loser must have been burned to death long ago. After hearing these words, Fang Ma felt that her energy and blood were flowing backwards. Her brain felt swollen and painful, and she fainted from the anger. Quick, call an ambulance. Ahem. Before Li Weiguo had time to breathe, he was hit in the face with a broom again. Auntie, I am Fang Ye's classmate. Do you know where he is now? The mahjong aunt holding the broom looked at the girl with an unusual temperament and appearance in surprise. She couldn't help but take a second look. Little girl, to tell you the truth, he rushed into the fire. Thanks. The fire was getting bigger and smaller, and the fire was extinguishing strangely. I have lived for 50 or 60 years, and I have never seen such a battle. Lan Yuan heard the scattered thoughts around him, and his heart trembled. Fang Yi didn't think that as a scorching sequencer, he could control flames, right? As far as she knows, only the corresponding sequence of abilities possessed by divine contractors can control the power of nature. In addition, he subconsciously thought that Fang's mother was at home, so he did such a reckless thing. However, this was only an afterthought. After the fire was discovered, people should not go in, to avoid injury. The firefighter who had just stopped Fang's mother shouted in a deep voice when he saw Lan Yuan. Lan Yuan quickly pulled out a certificate from his bag. The fire brigade member's pupils shrank slightly, and he opened his mouth. Let's go. Captain Lin. Who is this girl? Another young firefighter turned around in confusion. It turns out, there really are guardians. Captain Lin murmured. This is Lan Yuan's second time here. Just from the ferocious burn marks in the corridor, we can see how big the fire was at that time. Even Lan Yuan couldn't help but feel a little scared. How did Fong Yi break in? Is this ferryman who has just awakened and helped him hide his identity die like this? Her heart felt a little heavy. I couldn't help but recall Fong's mother's eyes with a look of death. Until he saw the door that was obviously destroyed by man-made violence, Lan Yuan's eyes lit up. Since Fong Yi could break in here, there might be a glimmer of hope. However, this is also her most optimistic view. But as long as there is a glimmer of hope, she can call Xiao Yuan and help Fong Yi with treatment. Crunch. In front of Lan Yuan, there was a mess. She stepped on the burned wood and the glass shattered by the high temperature. She did not dare to take a big breath, and there was a choking smell in her nose. Fong Yi, are you there? Lan Yuan covered his mouth and nose, frowning. In the ruin house, no one responded. Fong Yi, if you die, just say something. Fong Ye's house is not big, with an ordinary apartment with 3 bedrooms and 1 living room, a master bedroom, a second bedroom and a utility room, and the rest is the kitchen and bathroom. Even though the fire had been extinguished, the high temperature still remained in the room, and a thin layer of sweat soon appeared on Lan Yuan's forehead. The white shirt on her body was also wet with sweat on her back, and the tight-fitting vest underneath was looming. Strangeness. Lan Yuan's eyes were confused after walking out of the utility room. Logically speaking, even if Fong Yi was really burned to death, there should be a body, so that he wouldn't be completely destroyed. Until Lan Yuan stood at the bathroom door where he was searching for the last time. Look at the naked boy curled up in the bathtub. She opened her mouth, her voice was dry, and a golden light flashed across her eyes. What are you hiding here for? Fong Yi raised his head and looked at the girl in front of him. The eyes of those blood-crossed pupils were dead and gray, as if they were trying to pull her soul into them. She had never felt that the oppression of an ordinary serial number 199 user could be so strong. Seeing Fong Ye's unreserved expression, her heart beat violently. She saw the dark lines of thorns on Fong Ye's back. She closed her eyes and slowly formed a wry smile on her lips. She seemed to have discovered a great secret. Chapter 48, Part 1. I can't find my mother. I don't know where she is hiding. Fong Yi murmured, but he smiled strangely. He must be Yi. Only Yi would do such a crazy thing. What? Did you see Yi? Who is it? Lan Yuan was shocked. Is this fire related to the evil? What happened before this? She is a little overwhelmed now, because the amount of information on any matter is too large, and she doesn't even know which matter should be prioritized. I saw Fong Yi sitting in the bathtub, his eyes bursting with murderous intent. He was actually naked, so he opened the bathroom window and jumped out. Fong Yi. Lan Yuan's pupil shrank suddenly as he watched Fong Yi step on those light particles and fall into the air. The disaster contractor is actually a divine contractor similar to her. Lan Yuan had never heard of the fact that disaster contractors could master ordinary sequences. But brother, why don't you wear some clothes? Fortunately, Fong Ye's bathroom was not in the public eye, so we didn't see this shocking scene. Otherwise, it would have made headlines the next day. Hiss. Lan Yuan took a breath, and she suddenly remembered something. If Fong Ye's eyes of disaster are seen by everyone present, all the E's lurking in the crowd will appear. At that time, they will face the danger of being surrounded by at least 5 E's situation. After all, in addition to the residents of the community who gathered because of the fire, the melon eaters watching the excitement, there were also the fire brigade members. Hey, is this a survivor of the fire? The young firefighter was startled, but did not react much when he saw Fong Ye's naked body. After all, if your clothes are burned, if you don't take them off in time, it will cause greater burns to your body. Team Lin, there is a streaking survivor there. Xiao Wang, go get him a team uniform. If the injury is serious, go directly to the stretcher. Captain Lin didn't even look back. No, he seems to be fine. He doesn't even have any burn marks on his body, but he is coming towards us. Xiao Wang's tone suddenly became weird, and the corner of his mouth opened into a huge smile. Look what I found. What? Captain Lin raised his head and saw his team member Xiao Chao galloping away towards the naked man. His arm instantly burst through the orange-red fire brigade uniform, covering it with pieces of hard and glowing scales. First, little Wang. Lan Yuan, who was following Fong Yi, frowned slightly, and what was supposed to come had indeed come. The butterfly knife in her hand fluttered. Fong Yi, get out of the way. When Xiao Wang was still 3 meters away from the two of them, Fong Yi gave him a cold look. Boom! A cluster of pitch-black flames ignited from below, and suddenly grew in size and swept over the whole body of the... As the flames disappeared, what fell down was ashes. Is this scorching? Lan Yuan couldn't believe what just happened in front of her. She vaguely remembered that Li Lu couldn't even activate the flames when using searing heat. No, this was out of the scope of an ordinary sequence. Even if this is just a low fighting air. This strange flame reminded her of the Zhurong contractor whom she had met once at the headquarters. Just one meeting left an indelible impression on her. That man is in charge of 12 frontline combat teams, and is also the boss of the Ferryman Juhua department. That extremely distinctive characteristic, a hair of never-extinguishing flames, and a golden flame more violent than a tsunami, enough to evaporate a lake. At the same time, the ability sequence list stored at the ferryman headquarters is sequence number 199, Scorching Heat, slowly disappeared from above. When Lan Yuan was stunned, Fang Yi had already snatched the butterfly knife from her hand and stood in front of Li Weiguo. When he grabbed Li Weiguo's throat and lifted him high with one hand. Around them, at least 10 E's of various shapes slowly opened their fangs, revealing their true bodies. Among them were many faces that Lan Yuan had seen once. Ordinary people curiously looked at the people around them who suddenly turned into monsters, and even thought they were filming some kind of movie. Until the first man's body was pierced by a scarlet whip, only then did the crowd erupt into screams of fear. The scene suddenly fell into chaos. Lan Yuan's knuckles holding the butterfly knife turned white. Among these 10 heirs, there were quite a few mid-war heirs mixed in them. From their appearance alone, one could tell that most of them were goo, plague, and death. A more aggressive category. This is a tough battle. In all her previous missions to clear out heirs, she had never encountered so many heirs. Even so, she had no intention of running away. Lan Yuan moved quickly, his eyes were sharp, and he prioritized dealing with the low-level battle emergency. Li Weiguo looked at Fang Ye's strange eyes, his face was purple, and he grabbed Fang Ye's seemingly slender arms with both hands. He couldn't help but think of the way Fang's mother had her hands around his neck just now. Why? Why is this loser Fang Yi not dead? You are E. What? Even though Li Weiguo was full of doubts, he still managed to force his voice out of his throat. If you kill me, you will be waiting to go to jail for the rest of your life. You must be a ghost like E, as Uncle Qiao said, right? With a cruel smile on his lips, he picked up Lan Yuan's butterfly knife and made the first cut on Li Weiguo's body with slow movements and concentration. Ah! Li Weiguo screamed, blood seeping out of his wounds quickly. Fang Yi was startled when he saw the bright red color and laughed nervously. No! How could you bleed? It must be my eyesight. Li Weiguo's eyes were frightened and trembling like chaff. He really didn't expect that Fang Yi would dare to take action. He just felt that his nephew had gone crazy. As Li Weiguo's continuous and hoarse screams echoed in the old community, his body had been cut with hundreds of cuts, just like Ling Qi, but the miraculous thing is that even though Fang Ye's cutting hand was extremely fast, all the cutting points could barely avoid Li Weiguo's artery. At this moment, Li Weiguo had become a bloody man. His body was twitching and he was dying. Fang Yi. Lan Yuan held his bloody hand. The girl's face was stained with blood, and she suffered many injuries. Don't continue, she said sadly. The person in front of me has completely transformed into a stranger. She didn't think Li Weiguo shouldn't be tortured like this, but ordinary people shouldn't lose their lives because of Fang Ye's anger. Before killing E, they were also the ferrymen of the seasons who protected ordinary people. At this moment, the remaining 7 heirs on the field have surrounded the 2 of them, ready to make a move. Lan Yuan solved 3 low combat E's. Fang Yi looked indifferent and did not respond. He released his grip on Li Weiguo and glanced at all the heirs present. Unexpectedly, the dark lines of thorns on his body had climbed to both sides of his cheeks. Very well, come and sacrifice your life for the development of my sequence. Lan Yuan didn't understand what Fang Yi was talking about now, because on Zhang Qiu's birthday, the only people who witnessed Fang Yi devouring Yuan E were Pandora's 5th seat, Jason, and Cheng Shui. Several of them still have the E on their human faces, with taunting or mocking expressions. Even if they attack one by one, they can still fight Fang Yi to death. Arrogant sequencer. But what they didn't expect was that what happened next turned into a blood ritual of unilateral massacre. It's just that they are the prey. Chapter 49, Part 1. With a nervous smile on his face, Fang Yi shuttled between the circles of E. He becomes more and more comfortable using the power of predation, like a hungry lone wolf breaking into a flock of sheep. The moment the greedy mouth in the palm of your hand touches E, its body will explode into a pool of black liquid, which will be instantly absorbed by Fang Yi. Plunder. The development degree is 2%. Plunder. The development degree is 3%. Plunder. The development degree is 4%. Lan Yuan was completely dumbfounded. She had never seen Qinger fight in such a rough and weird way. This battle ended quickly. There was something wrong with Fang Ye's state. He was breathing heavily and his eyes were scarlet. Those evil emotions before his death were intertwined and impacted him hard. Now Fang Ye's senses are extremely sharp, but precisely because of his sharp senses, the surging complex emotions are particularly like a double-edged sword. Bang bang. Fang Ye's heart beat faster and faster. Bang bang bang. Bang 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 bang. Fang Yi screamed. His face turned pale, and his heart seemed to have been hit hard by a heavy hammer. He who had just swallowed 7 evils in the blink of an eye, now fell to the ground in a state of embarrassment. Fang Yi laughed loudly with the greedy mouth in his palm, giving people a feeling of extreme fragmentation and absurdity. The next second, Dense thorns of flesh and blood burst out of his heart and penetrated the skin on his chest. Fang Yi. Lan Yuan looked at Fang Yi in shock, his whole body feeling cold. She didn't understand why Fang Yi suddenly became like this, nor did she understand what that mouth was. This is the price of greed. Even with only one mouth, Lan Yuan could still hear the sarcasm in his tone. Weak mortals trying to control the power of disaster is ridiculous, ridiculous. Shut up, don't show up in Fang Ye's hands. Lan Yuan shouted angrily. Is that Ice voice? Fang's mother woke up from the ambulance with an oxygen tube still under her nose. In a daze, Fang Ma heard a lot of noisy sounds, until it was quiet. A howl like a beast broke out. It's definitely her son's voice. She couldn't have heard it wrong. Fang Ma tore off the oxygen tube between her nose and moved her body tremblingly out of the ambulance. What she saw was the broken limbs and broken arms on the ground. Li Weigua, who was neither human nor ghost, and Fang Ye's chest was covered with countless strange spikes. Oh no! Fang Yi was in a daze, raised his head and saw Fang's mother's face full of tears. Hallucination? Mom, I'm sorry. What happened? How could you become like this? Fang's mother burst into tears. It turns out, wasn't Auntie in the room all this time? Lan Yuan finally understood how absurd and dramatic this fire case was, which was caused by Uncle Fang Yi and also involved Fang Yi, and ordinary people. Just a slight difference can make a huge mistake. Destiny is like a preset track, and everyone can't help it. A forced smile appeared on Fang Ye's face. He could feel his life flowing away rapidly. Lan Yuan. I'm sorry. Lan Yuan's eyes were slightly red, looking at the dying Fang Yi and the corpses of ordinary people on the ground, as if he had made some kind of determination. Her left eye burned with a blazing golden light. She wasn't sure she would succeed. Every divine contractor has his own forbidden technique, just like the original fifth seed of Pandora, Jason. But under Qiao's methods, it was not displayed. Stop struggling. Your efforts will be in vain after all. The mouth in Fang Ye's hand mocked Lan Yuan, but Fang's mother, as an ordinary person, could not see it. Lan Yuan let out a breath. At this moment, her eyes and the whites of her eyes turned into a rich golden color. Backtracking. As the scene around him changed, the greedy mouth in Fang Ye's palm couldn't help but smile at the moment. Are you the Chinese god, the contractor of Emperor Ziwei? Lan Yuan did not respond. A drop of sweat streaked down her smooth and white forehead. Concentrate. Concentrated. Lan Yuan had never felt that his mental energy was consumed so quickly. Just like the butterfly effect, small events can trigger huge chain reactions. And she doesn't have to do much, just say a word to change the existing ending. The scene keeps changing, flickering, and pulling. In Lan Yuan's golden eyes, countless pictures seemed to be dragged along some kind of progress bar, rewinding rapidly forward. Fang Yi looked in disbelief at the gradually disappearing spikes on his chest. Hundreds of knife edges on Li Weigua's body disappeared one after another. The first person killed by the air stood there blankly. The panicked and screaming crowd returned to calm, and the black flames that swept through the first air erupted from it, dissipated on the firefighting suit. She succeeded. Casting the forbidden technique is not as difficult as imagined, but this is indeed the first time Lan Yuan has used it. Because when she knew she had this ability, the two people she had wanted to change countless times in the past were no longer there. Lan Yuan stood in front of the bathroom where she last searched. Look at the naked boy curled up in the bathtub. She smiled slightly. Fang Yi, don't be willful. Your mother is still waiting for you in the ambulance downstairs. Fang Yi raised his head and looked at the girl in front of him, seeming to understand something. In those eyes with dead eyes, the red cross is gradually disappearing until it turns into normal black pupils. He entered the second stage of the Eye of Calamity, the hidden eye. Lan Yuan, I'm sorry. Fang Yi still said that. He touched his cold and wet face. His eyes were red and he looked guilty. As a ferryman, the price of saving so many people is just forgetting about you. It's a good deal. Lan Yuan shrugged, looking nonchalant. Besides, after all my memories of you disappear, you don't have to worry about your eye of disaster being exposed. How about you? Are you going to have some fun? Maybe. Fang Yi smiled bitterly. He was not stupid enough not to understand the meaning of a silent person suddenly talking a lot. However, sometimes you really look like Lan Mu. How similar. Fang Yi retorted. After a while, no one responded. The girl in front of her looked frightened and her eyes widened. Where did the naked man come from? A scream that almost pierced his eardrums resounded throughout the residential building. Ah! Snap! Fang Yi walked down the residential building, covering his left cheek which was a little hot, red and swollen, looking helpless. After walking a few steps, a young firefighter ran over with a uniform. He had a young face and a sunny smile, and he looked like a big boy. Brother here, are you not hurt? No, thank you. Fang Yi shook his head, quickly put on their team uniforms, and walked towards the ambulance. However, why does he always feel that this person looks familiar? Especially this naked man look. The firefighters looked at Fong Ye's back with some confusion. Forget it, there were too many strange things today. The uncles and aunts all looked at Fong Ye, who miraculously survived the fire, as if they had seen a ghost. Could this kid have used a trick to blind him and run away? He obviously pretended to be with Fong Ma for life and death, but in the end, his own life was the most dangerous. What a harm. Young people nowadays like to shout slogans. Fong Ye walked past Li Weiguo expressionlessly, but the latter couldn't help but flinch. He always felt like his whole body was tingling after seeing Fong Ye. He pulled out the ambulance, and on the stretcher was Fong's mother, who was unconscious. Mom, I'm back. Chapter 50, Part 1. Where have you been? Lan Mu stood in the living room wearing home clothes with a cold expression. When Taro said that he had led Fong Ye out of the villa, Lan Yuan hurried out. Result. It's already 2 o'clock. Originally, he was in a bad mood because he failed to find Pancheng. But my sister, a high school student, actually came home at 2 in the morning. What concept? I saw a fire in a residential building. When I walked in, I actually saw a naked man. Lan Yuan murmured in confusion. She didn't know why she was there or why she left. Go in. But that naked man is really eye-catching. Lan Mu frowned. Although he didn't know who the naked man Lan Yuan was talking about was, it probably wasn't Fong Ye. Fong Ye couldn't do such a thing yet. You are not allowed to go home past 10 o'clock in the future. Good. Lan Mu was shocked by this meek answer. Aren't they still in the Cold War? When did Lan Yuan become so easy to talk to? Before he could be proud for 2 seconds, he saw 2 lines of tears streaming down Lan Yuan's face. He suddenly became confused and panicked. What on earth was going on? Hey, why are you crying? I didn't bully you. Lan Mu stood there at a loss, regretting just now that he had restricted Lan Yuan from going home. He was already a high school student, so it was normal to go out with friends. The big deal. I'll ask you to come back at 12 o'clock. Lan Mu scratched his head and kept apologizing. What's the point of crying about such a trivial matter? Don't you always disobey me? I'm fine. She didn't know what was wrong with herself. She just felt so sad and depressed. Hearing the sound of Lan Yuan silently locking the door, Lan Mu quietly collapsed. Nothing is a problem. According to his ex-girlfriends, when a woman says she is fine, she is fine. And when a woman says she is fine, she is being weird. The next day, Lan Mu saw the news about the fire on the news. The milk glass in his hand shook, and a lot of it immediately splashed on the black shirt he had just changed today. But Lan Mu's attention was now completely diverted to the old house in the photo. Isn't this Fong Ye's home? As far as he knew, only he and Lan Yuan had been to Fong Ye's home. So, could it be that there was a fire at Fong Ye's house last night? Lan Yuan went to help, but his sister was not a water control sequencer, so she couldn't help. And why didn't you call the rest of Wu Qing's team? Why did Lan Yuan come back so devastated last night? Could it be that Fong Ye is dead? Lan Mu was startled and immediately took out his cell phone to call Fong Ye, but the call didn't go through. He called Zhou instead. Calm down. Xiao on the opposite side extinguished the cigarette, but in his hand, and listened helplessly to Lan Mu's lengthy speech and analysis on the phone. Fong Ye is not dead. I have contacted his mother this morning, and Fong Ye also answered the phone. Then why did my sister become like this after just one trip? Lan Mu was a little excited. I guess it may have something to do with the forbidden technique of the god's contractor. Xiao's voice was light, and in Lan Mu's ears it was like a huge stone falling into his heart. What? Judging from the situation you described, Lan Yuan has probably lost all memory about Fong Ye, because I called up the surveillance of that old community. The naked man Lan Yuan described was none other than Xiao Fong. Furthermore, among all the previous divine contractors of the ferryman, there are many cases where memory fragments or errors have occurred due to the use of forbidden surgery. Lan Mu also calmed down after hearing Xiao's analysis. That means the fire was not only man-made, but also related to evil. Yes, but I don't intend to delve into it. Now that the matter has been resolved, blaming has lost any meaning. You're right, Uncle Xiao. Lan Mu sighed. Besides, the first guardian Xiao Fong met was Lan Yuan, so the two of them naturally became closer. I believe that this is also the result you expected. Lan Yuan has forgotten Xiao Fong. It is difficult to get acquainted with another person based on her personality. Zhou said. As expected, this matter appeared in the Wuqing Morning News. Li Weiguo received overwhelming abuse from netizens, and his girlfriend, who was about to get married, decisively cut ties with him and issued a statement that she had no contact with him for a long time. However, Li Weiguo, who is still going through the legal process, is not in the mood to prioritize this matter. But he was also cautious. After all, his purpose was just to prevent Feng Ma from selling the house, so he investigated the whereabouts of the residents upstairs and downstairs at that time in advance, and only after confirming that these people were not at home, he secretly let her go. A fire. Even so, What he faces is not only a fixed-term imprisonment of between 3 years and less than 10 years, but also a huge amount of compensation. I heard from Fang's mother that Li Weiguo was still looking for a lawyer everywhere, trying to win his forgiveness and reduce his sentence by a few years. But after this incident, the remaining affection that Fang's mother had for her younger brother Li Weiguo was completely consumed. As for where the mother and son will live, Fang Yi decided to find an agent to rent a house first, and then wait for the court's decision. Fang Yi took a week's leave. In addition to the urgent matter of renting a house, he also had to buy a new mobile phone. These days, he always takes Fang's mother to a small hotel near his home. Fortunately, he still had 150,000 yuan on hand, which was not too tight. As a trainee guardian of the Four Seasons, he also received his first month's salary of 6,000. Get a mobile phone with good signal. Fang Yi stood in front of the counter and hesitated. All the money at home was used to help him treat his illness, so in the true sense, he had never bought a mobile phone by himself. So naturally, I don't understand the ins and outs of buying a mobile phone. As for why he bought a mobile phone, it was because when he entered the fire scene, he even forgot to have a mobile phone in his trouser pocket. After reacting afterwards, he felt sad for a long time silently. Is the signal good? The lady at the counter looked up at the young face in front of her with some disdain. These days, all mobile phone signals are good. It mainly depends on what configuration you want. Configuration? Even though Fang Yi ranked first in academic performance all year round, this question still came to his blind spot. Looking at Fang Yi, who looked confused, the lady at the counter became even more impatient. Then tell me your budget, and I'll give you a recommendation. 2,000. Fang Yi was calm. The function of the mobile phone for him is only to facilitate contact and facilitate access to information. As for playing games and watching videos, he is not interested. Hearing this number, the lady at the counter completely lost her patience. She threw a Lammy mobile phone in front of Fang Yi and said, "Pay. This meets your requirements. There is no after-sale service and no free items." "Oh," Fang Yi responded. A slender hand pressed on the blue rice phone. "Is this your service attitude?"
Thanks for watching. You can find the next videos in the playlist linked in the info card or directly on my channel. And as always, if you have any feedback, feel free to share it in the comments too.